The story begins by talking about the oldest, most mysterious, and sinister family of alchemists, the Perserad. In their quest to understand the universe, they conducted countless chemical experiments. These mad alchemists created numerous biochemical disasters everywhere. Dragons that spat venom, 20-meter monsters pumped full of anabolic substances, and even some mosquitoes that sucked out brains. However, for unknown reasons, 300 years ago, the family went into decline. However, he, the most talented descendant of the family, known as Izzo Perserad, is also considered the greatest alchemist of the century, and he swears that he will create biochemical weapons that will rival the gods and restore the family's glory. He spreads his arms, declaring that, at this very moment, the final calamity is about to be born, something he has been working on for the past 400 days. He tells Dirty Rat to begin the process, but to keep the purification area at 70%. The big rat, whose name is Cheese, replies, telling him to stop calling him Dirty Rat. Then he announces that the fluids are at 99% and the body temperature is at 25 degrees. The signals were stable. Izzo orders him to add 52 grams of black sulfur, and he obeys. Then 160 grams of white mercury, and he obeys. Continuing, he asks for 366 grams of yellow salt, and the guy obeys. However, at that moment, stability drops to 72%. Izzo immediately orders the tank to be opened, all fluids drained, and depressurization to prepare for the unveiling. The rat disables the safety measures and announces that the creation tank is ready. The purple symbol on the device begins to glow, and Izzo is thrilled because finally he has created the most dangerous chemical weapon the world has ever seen. He gazes at the glorious image of the calamity he is about to unleash. Spreading his arms, he declares that with such a terrible form, he will take a step forward and begin the conquest of the world. However, he sees the foot, he sees the heart, and soon realizes that what was born was not a monster. Izzo, shocked, asks what the hell this thing is. He says he needs to see it up close because something is wrong. The rat warns him that it's dangerous, but he approaches anyway, telling him to shut up. Stating before the girl, he finds it strange. Perhaps it was some kind of mimicry technique where the calamity disguises itself as a woman. That would explain those two giant spheres, which are surely energy storage sacs necessary to power the calamity. He reaches out to touch, saying he needs to test. Judging the softness and texture, he is sure that damn thing was a normal person. He then wonders where the angelic arm of extinction he had transplanted went, or the jade eye of the sorrowful empress that he had implanted. Not to mention that he had also placed a Type 1 tireless heart, but he wasn't hearing any blood movement. Suddenly, something opens its eyes and the rat tells him to be careful. Izzo is about to realize something, but it's too late as it attacks, pinning him to the ground. Strangely, Cheese just sighs, saying what a pity, but it seems he will have to carry on the Perserad legacy. He even starts thinking about how the tombstone will read, the genius alchemist who was not slain by the city's heroes, but by his own experiments. Izzo immediately orders him to help, threatening to stuff a bunch of worms into his cheese if he doesn't. The rat gets mad, saying he's being way too cruel. However, the red liquid that it spilled was actually just some remnants of a flaming slug. Izzo declares that he, the greatest alchemist, would not be killed by his own creations. He tells Cheese to remember that he had instructed him to add the soul extraction liquid, so this creature wouldn't have the courage to hurt him. Cheese tries to recall and says he doesn't remember doing that at all. That's when he recalls a day when Izzo brought that supposed liquid and told him to stop drinking it and add it to the production. Cheese had opened it, liked the smell, and decided to pour it into his own drink instead. Now in the present, he is certain that everything is doomed. Izzo returns to the final calamity, declaring that he is her master and ordering her to obey. Suddenly she rises. He asks why she's getting so close, and the girl, as if responding, grabs him. The boy nearly explodes from a flurry of deadly attacks. Spiraling into chaos, he shoves her away, confused. He runs off, shouting that he was exposed because of that damn dirty rat, and that he now needs the purification spray. He presses the button, and the girl is trapped again. She keeps banging against the glass, but she doesn't seem able to speak. Meanwhile, Izzo is dousing himself with purification spray. At that moment, he remembers another familiar face. He starts digging through the files, and Cheese asks what's going on. Then he finds records about the original body of Experiment 2252. He is certain it is the same woman from back then. Cheese suddenly remembers and says that's the girl they found without arms or legs. However, he recalls that her hair was purple back then, so why is it yellow now? Izzo replies that this is the least of their problems. First, they need to understand this personality change. We then see a year ago in the Golden City at the Queen's Bank. Everyone was going about their day peacefully, but nearby a chemical bomb had been planted. When the timer hit 0, gas began spreading everywhere. Meanwhile, Izzo and Cheese were casually relieving themselves in the bathroom. The rat comments that he's sure the dragon toxin has already been released. Izzo reaches into his bag, pulls out a mask, grabs a weapon, and now it was time to begin. In the bank, everyone had collapsed on the floor as the two walked in. A guard ordered them to freeze, saying the bank's owner was on the way. However, Izzo fired a shot from his little gun, and the guy turned into a slime. He even said that the damn thing had become much cuter now. At that moment, Cheese stopped in front of a mother and child and said he had found what he liked most. Desperate, the mother begged him not to kill her son, But Cheese did something much worse. He stole the child's lollipop and walked away singing, saying this one was a good one. With that, they locked the entire place and began melting down the bank. A bomb was installed, the whole thing exploded, and they accessed the vault full of cash. The rascal was delighted that everything had gone perfectly. Later, outside, they were walking back home, humming happily. Isao called himself the genius alchemist of crime, saying there was no better name for him. Meanwhile, Cheese wanted to go to the bar and celebrate the night. But our boy immediately refused, saying that last time he kept giving money to those ugly women, so no way. All of this was going to be invested in the final calamity. Once they finished this experiment, the whole city would become their playground. Considering the opportunities, Cheese admitted that it actually made more sense. They looked at each other and agreed that when that happened, they would go to the mayor and dance to the music. They laughed, saying they thought alike, but suddenly, they heard a loud noise. They immediately crouched down and Cheese said someone must be following them, but Iso was sure it hadn't come from so close. With smoke rising from his toy, there was a man named Homunculi who worked at the city's security office, and he was chasing a girl who was completely worn out, collapsed on the ground. Cheese scoffed that they were being underestimated. They had just robbed a bank, and this guy was chasing someone else. The brute said that indeed one unit from that group was strong enough to have killed 5 of his detectives. But what he really wanted was the target list the Hellhounds had sent her to eliminate. If she cooperated, maybe he would spare her life. Then he laughed, saying he had forgotten that every member of her unit had their vocal cords cut so they couldn't talk to anyone. Suddenly, she reached for something on her back, but her movement was quickly stopped. Homunculi smirked, calling her a very naughty girl for trying something in this situation. That's when he saw she was reaching for a teddy bear and wondered if she actually liked that thing. At that moment, she grabbed his pants and let out some distorted sounds, but he simply smacked her on the back of the head and slammed her back to the ground. Stepping on the poor girl, he sneered, saying that, apparently, this weird bear was more important to her. He tossed it near her face and delivered a final blow to the creature. Damn, what a cruel bastard. He then said that since she wouldn't give up the list at the very least, he would take her body to claim a reward. But that was when Izzo appeared, clapping his hands, saying that he had finally found the so-called nemesis of criminals in this place. The old man pointed at him, asking who the hell he was. Then our boy introduced himself as the most cruel and wicked criminal in this city, as well as the greatest alchemist of all, Izzo the Baron. Apparently, he was hiding his family name. Cheese cleared his throat, and Izzo quickly added that he almost forgot to introduce his right-hand man, Dr. Madrat. Cheese immediately corrected him, saying he wasn't Izzo's subordinate, since they were on equal footing in all of this. Besides, his title was Madman, Dr. Madman Rat. Izzo pointed out that his name was now too niche because it had mad twice, but Cheese argued that when a word is repeated, it sounds way cooler. That's when Homunculi interrupted them, saying he wasn't here for some childish game, and they'd better run back to their mommies. The protagonist scoffed, saying that apparently he was going to be underestimated once again. Both of them threw sacks of money on the ground, saying this was the result of their latest work. The old man saw the 2 piles and was immediately certain that these bastards were the ones who robbed the White Queen's bank. The 2 started acting like showmen, telling him not to praise them so much. At that moment, Homunculi sighed and pulled out his gun, saying this was the first time he had encountered people so happy to be accused of something. He then aimed at them and warned that normally bullets were too expensive to waste on amateurs like them, but today he would make an exception. Isao thanked him and said he was eager to witness the sharpshooting skills of the city's #1 marksman. He then wished him luck, but as soon as he pulled the trigger, the gun wouldn't fire. He felt a strange heat, and suddenly, his entire arm started trembling. A wave of weakness hit him and he stumbled forward. That's when he realized that inside the money bags was poison. Isao smirked, saying it was too late for him to notice. That gas would bring anyone down after inhaling it for 8 seconds, but he had already been breathing it in for over a minute. Homunculi then asked what the hell his goal was. Were they trying to save this woman? But Isao scoffed, saying he was a villain, as if he would ever do something as heroic as saving someone. Then he pulled out his little gun and said they despised the so-called heroes of the city. The guy turned into a green slime and scurried away immediately. Cheese laughed, saying they could finally head home and have some fun. That's when he noticed Izzo standing there with the girl and asked what the hell he was doing. Izzo remained silent, just staring, saying he was curious to see how long she would last. She had lost an arm and a leg, and her wounds were already starting to rot. Homunculi hadn't gone easy on her either, and the poor thing didn't have a single intact rib left. He pulled out a syringe and muttered that he detected several toxins in her blood. It was a miracle she was even alive, which was precisely why he was so curious to see what was so special about this woman. But Cheese scoffed, saying that regardless, she wouldn't survive much longer, so they should just head back already. Not to mention, there was no way he was actually thinking about saving someone. Izzo responded that it was truly impossible. He was the most wicked person in the Golden City. Saving someone would be an insult. He grabbed his cloak, and Cheese admitted he was afraid that, for a moment, Izzo really wanted to save that girl. Looking back, he saw her dragging herself and remarked how incredible it was that she could still do anything in that state. However, he decided to forget all of this. After all, there were countless people rotting away in this place. A thunderclap echoed and rain began to pour in that very alley. As the two walked away, they spoke of how the sins of the city would be washed away and everything would be forgotten. The poor girl was left behind, staring at her destroyed teddy bear. She crawled once more, feeling a brief joy as she pulled it into her arms. With that, she lost consciousness and drifted away. Or maybe not, because Ezo came back, didn't he, folks? The scene then shifted to the nightmare nest in the operations room. Cheese asked if Ezo understood what they were doing there. Ezo replied that they were performing an operation, to which the big rat countered that what they were really doing was saving someone's life. He asked since when his friend had started this nonsense of saving people and forgotten their goal. Izzo insisted that he had never forgotten. The goal was to become the worst villain of all, and to restore the lost honor and glory of the ancient Perserid family. However, for this plan to work, they needed a biological weapon known as the Final Calamity, and a body that could accept this calamity needed countless negative emotions: pain, despair, rage, and sorrow. But the most difficult condition was that this weapon needed to have a sliver of kindness. The experiments kept failing because they never found someone who fulfilled that last condition. That was why they needed this woman. She met all the requirements. She said he understood, but she was far too injured and could die at any moment. Esso said that was exactly why they would begin the final calamity immediately. He ordered the rat to prepare the cocoon of despair as they were about to start. That was when they used the arms of a blazing angel, an emerald eye from the sorrowful empress, and an infinite, unstoppable heart from a modified model. All of this would be used to create the cocoon of despair. With that, he declared it was time to begin the first miracle. Back in the present, he pressed her image against the glass and confirmed that the resemblance was undeniable. She's asked what they should do. Izzo stated that tomorrow they would begin testing. His friend asked what they would do if she turned out to be a failure. Izzo answered that they would dispose of her. He didn't keep failures by his side. A place filled with masks, notes, maps, and a poster of a very healthy-looking girl. That was Izzo's room. He was sleeping peacefully until he remembered the precise blow he had taken. That made him roll over in bed, wondering why he couldn't sleep. He seemed confused about everything and decided that, even though this place was incredibly secure, it wouldn't hurt to check on things. He reached the core and saw that she was still there. At least now he could relax. However, he soon noticed that she seemed to be trembling. That was when he wondered if the great final calamity was afraid of sleeping alone at night. He turned away, saying it didn't matter to him. She was just the result of an experiment, probably defective anyway. However, he stopped again, remembering her attack and her sadness. Sighing, he gave in and opened the chamber, telling the final calamity to hurry up, since he would take her somewhere better to sleep. Obviously, she lit up with happiness, blushing. They walked through the level 7 observation room for high-risk creatures. There was a high-risk experiment there known as the wild dragon. It growled that once it was free, it would swallow Ezo whole. There was also a creature called the Abyssal Eye, which warned that the moment it escaped, it would torment his mind forever. Izzo smirked, saying that those two were the friendliest around, which was why he was leaving her right there between them. The girl looked a bit confused, but he was already walking away, saying he would go back to sleep while the monsters yelled at him. Back in his room, he sat on the bed, mumbling that at least now the final calamity wasn't alone. Finally, he could sleep peacefully. Meanwhile, the wild dragon turned to the Abyssal Eye, asking why there was a human girl placed between them among powerful creatures. The Abyssal Eye admitted it had no idea, but it saw that Izo had called her the final calamity. The dragon burst into laughter, saying it was impossible for such a tiny human to be the so-called final calamity. The Abyssal Eye laughed as well, saying it was probably just another one of Izzo's countless failures. Truly something to laugh at. The little girl banged on the glass in distress, but the dragon warned that Izo's crystal glass was unbreakable. Not even in its B0 form could it scratch it. The Abyssal Eye told her to give up. It had already fired countless laser beams at the glass, and nothing had happened. But suddenly, the girl stopped for a second. Her hand began to transform into something red, blazing with flames. Both of them flinched, and as soon as she touched the glass, it began to crack. They stood there, watching, trying to understand what was happening, and suddenly, the entire glass chamber exploded. She stood there, confused, staring at her own hand, not understanding what happened. Meanwhile, the dragon's jaw was on the floor, and the big eye was now trembling with fear. The dragon immediately knelt, apologizing, saying that he now deeply respected his big sis, but all he wanted was for her to help him escape from there. The Abyssal Eye said the same thing, swearing that from now on, he would serve her if she helped him break free. While all of this was happening, Issa was sleeping peacefully, and Cheese had drunk himself into unconsciousness. That was when the facility's alarm blared. Faster than firefighters getting dressed, the big rat asked what was going on, and why it was a level 4 alarm. Hizo explained that this signal only triggered when at least 3 barriers had been destroyed. Inside the elevator, he stated that the ones who had escaped were the dragon and the Abyssal Eye. However, something else had also escaped from room 203, which was strange because he was sure that room had been empty. Immediately, Hizo pulled out his tablet, saying he needed to see this for himself. That was when he saw the final calamity destroying all the glass. Instead of being worried, he cheered, celebrating that she had activated the arm he had transplanted. Meanwhile, She's wanted to know why the girl, who was supposed to be in another room, had ended up there. They arrived at the high-risk experiment area. Both of them stepped into the room where the dragon and the abyssal eye were wreaking havoc. Izzo asked if the two had had enough fun already. I think the creatures suddenly tucked their tentacles between their legs. The dragon, however, stepped forward, snarling that he had found the bastard who had imprisoned him for so long. It was time to pay the price for that. But Cheese pulled out a gun and fired a shot toward the dragon. A yellow mist spread in the air, and the creature immediately asked what that was. Izzo smirked, saying it was a grenade filled with over 200 dragon spider eggs. And as a dragon, he should know exactly what that meant. The beast shuddered, admitting that those damn spider creatures were a subspecies of dragons. They could infest and feed on other beings, and anyone infected by them would die. Izzo praised him, saying at least he was intelligent. However, while this happened, the abyssal eye took advantage of the distraction, charging up a blast, ready to evaporate them both in that instant. But Izzo knew the abyssal eye's weakness. The more energy it accumulated, the more exposed its eye became. A flashbang exploded right in front of the creature, making it crash to the ground, blinded. It groaned in agony, screaming that the bastard wanted to blind him forever. Izzo then asked if the two of them were going to keep making a mess, or if they were ready to go back to their cages. However, the dragon declared that they wouldn't give up, not now that they had Big Sis on their side. The abyssal eye agreed, saying she could melt the glass of this place, so Izzo had no chance against her. Izzo frowned and asked who this Big Sis was supposed to be. The two creatures immediately bowed, and the girl stepped forward between them. Now he knew exactly who they were talking about, and if she had really lost control, things would get difficult. The dragon grinned, saying it had been a long time since he had seen Izzo make that kind of fearful face. Then he leaned toward the girl and whispered that Izzo was a cruel man. He had trapped all the creatures in this place and treated them like lab rats. The final experiment continued, advancing with a powerful presence, striking fear into everyone. Cheese urged Izzo to activate the emergency protocol immediately. However, Izzo revealed that, unfortunately, there was no way to guarantee 100% security against the final calamity. Suddenly, in a quick movement, she leaped toward them. Izzo flinched as she tackled him to the ground. The massive dragon laughed, saying he couldn't wait to see Izzo beg for mercy before he got infested with eggs. If he took too long to answer, Big Sis would take his life. However, that was when he noticed something strange. She wasn't attacking him. She was doing that cruel move again. He scowled, asking what the hell she was doing to him. Izzo tried to push her away and asked if she was done yet. She tried to climb onto him again, but he sighed and said he understood what she wanted. She didn't want to sleep in this place. She wanted to go somewhere else. She pushed against him again, and he scolded her for acting like a dog. The wild dragon called out to her, telling her to use that move again, the one that had shattered the glass. Izzo then realized why she had suddenly activated that power. They returned to the elevator, but she kept pressing all the buttons, making a mess. Meanwhile, the wild dragon was strapped into a reflective containment suit, yelling at Izzo to come back and remove it before everyone in the area started laughing at him. At the abyssal eye's chamber, Izzo had left a bunch of onions. Then we saw a baby nine-headed hydra. The creature opened its eye, and right beside it, the Calamity was staring at it. She kept looking at it, and Izzo noted that, apparently, she refused to sleep in the lab. The problem now was figuring out where she would stay for the night. Cheese said it was simple. Just let her sleep in his room. But Izzo immediately called that idea crazy. She was an experiment. Suddenly, the scene changed to a recorded surveillance feed, where someone was calling for Detective 5682. It seemed like they were in some kind of hotel, but the footage was glitching. Suddenly, the images stabilized, and they wondered what had happened in that place for there to be so many bodies. All that remained were skeletons, and they asked what kind of terrifying creature could have done this. Suddenly, the detective began coughing violently, and the person recording asked what was happening. He looked at his dirty hand and warned that he had been poisoned. At that moment, someone approached, saying that another meal had arrived. Looking up, he found himself face to face with a black dragon and a rather dangerous-looking woman. The artist certainly gave them the attention they deserved. The creature on her back lunged at the detective, and with that, the camera cut off. That was an extra chapter I ended up narrating without realizing. But now we're back with our boy and his rat. Right when Cheese told him to go to sleep, Izzo immediately refused. But the rat insisted, saying that the disaster girl could only feel calm near him. Izzo scoffed, saying that was obvious after all. He had made sure to add an ingredient that guaranteed she wouldn't harm him. That's when Cheese revealed that he hadn't added the soul extract at all. In fact, he had drunk it like it was wine. Izzo was about to yell at him, but his friend quickly explained that it was his fault for giving orders while he was drunk. While he argued with the rat, saying that if she lost control, everyone would die, she was peacefully playing with the aquarium. That's when he realized she had already dived in and was pulling at the hydra. The creature seemed to be trying to flee, but she quickly followed it behind a rock. The girl was determined, to say the least. Meanwhile, Izzo yelled at Xiaoju that the hydra was not a toy and ordered her to get out. Cheese continued eating his cheese while our boy kept demanding that she get out of there. She didn't obey, so he grabbed her by the leg and started pulling. The suffering this girl endured was unreal. He fell to the ground. You know what happens next? She had many abilities, and one of them was compression, using gravitational force. Izzo was a talented alchemist, but he had no physical strength to withstand such magic. Meanwhile, Cheese was laughing at his misery. With the bruise forming on his face, Iso commanded that disaster never enter Shoju's tank again. Cheese started walking away, saying Izao could keep looking after the disaster girl. Iso wanted to argue, but the big cat told him to calm down. The girl was very gentle and delicate. Just don't let her go into berserker mode, or the consequences would be unimaginable. The protagonist found the whole idea of her being a gentle girl ridiculous. After all, she was nothing more than an experiment. However, just then, she sneezed. Turning around, he saw her with a pained expression. With that, the poor alchemist realized he would have to make this sick girl take a bath. Sometime later in the bathroom, he used a scanner to check if she had any kind of virus inside her. However, even after scanning 3 times, the device couldn't detect anything. He was in disbelief that he would have to let one of his experiments use the bathroom. He told her to hurry up and bathe while he left. But the apocalypse girl looked confused, and he immediately understood why. He pointed at the door, saying he was going that way, then pointed at her, telling her to just obey that. After signaling the action, he told her to step in and be done with it. She thanked him, saying she understood. But then she obeyed immediately. He jumped in shock. However, with his eyes closed, he started wondering why he was even embarrassed. He was agreed. But as he opened his eyes confidently, that confidence lasted for only a second before he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Sometime later, he was holding his shower head, nose pinched shut. Frustrated that she was causing so much trouble, he was even having to help with this. He applied the shampoo and warned her not to open her eyes or she would go blind, and that wouldn't be his responsibility. Then he told her to turn around and sprayed water on her face to rinse the soap off. Watching her expression, he couldn't help but think that this biological creature made of carbon had done an excellent job of deceiving him. He shut off the water, told her to drive herself, and said he was leaving. And he warned her that this was the last time he would help. She had learned now, so he wouldn't be taking care of her anymore. However, he stepped right into his tragic fate, did a full flip, and fell straight into the water. The poor guy even hit his head and groaned in pain. At that moment, he regretted not just taking her to the machine room and blasting her with a water gun instead. She looked a bit confused but tried to help him up. That's when Cheese entered, saying he had found the collar of revolt, which would stop her from attacking. But then he saw the scene. Without another word, he turned and left, saying that it looked like the two of them had already worked things out. He slammed the door shut, only to open it again, telling Ezo that if he planned on doing anything, he better wear a protective suit. With that, a bar of soap came flying at him, and he was gone. Standing outside, Cheese muttered that it was amazing. For all of Izzo's brilliance as an alchemist, he had absolutely no experience. He looked at a picture on the wall and told Master to rest in peace. He would take care of the boy. A little while later, he stepped in to help with the experiment. He grabbed a hair dryer, plugged it in, and started drying her off. However, upon seeing the shape of the device, she suddenly remembered the countless blasts she had suffered in her past life. He was speaking with his eyes closed, saying that her hair was still wet. But when he opened them, she was gone. He wondered where she had run off to, then noticed her trembling behind the curtain. Having no idea why she was reacting like that, he pulled back the curtain and told her to come on. It was getting late. But she was curled up in the corner, and he had no clue what had scared her so much. After considering what he had done, he realized it might have been the hairdryer. Thinking back to how Homunculi had taken her down in that alley, it made sense that she would have trauma with objects of a similar shape. He let out a sigh, muttering that, without a doubt, she was an incredible hassle. She was still trembling, so he stopped and called for the disaster girl. As soon as she turned, he pulled out the hairdryer. She flinched again, covered her head, and curled up. Then he pressed the button, and a gentle breeze began to blow. Slowly, she opened one eye, and found herself staring at him, pointing the hairdryer at his own face, letting the wind blast him. Her terrified expression shifted into a small giggle. Sometime later, she was drying her own hair and having fun. But 20 minutes passed, and she was still enjoying herself. That's when he realized he should have let her stay scared of the damn thing. 30 minutes later, he yanked it from her hands, telling her that enough was enough. Her hair was more than dry. She seemed like she wanted to play with it more, but he warned her that acting all cutesy wouldn't work. He locked it in a drawer, turned the key, and told her to go to sleep already. The poor girl was still sitting there, clueless. She didn't even know how to talk. Meanwhile, Izzo knew the real problem was just beginning. Where the hell was he supposed to make this weirdo sleep? First of all, there was no way she was sleeping in his bed. That was an unbreakable rule for any true alchemist. However, the moment he looked back, she was already curled up, sleeping peacefully on his bed. He pulled her off, scolding her for breaking his rules. Some time passed, and now he was lying on his bed, while she sat on the floor, pouting. He reminded her that she was an experiment, and experiments weren't allowed on the bed. He was already being generous, letting her sleep on the floor as long as she stayed quiet and didn't move too much. With that, he turned off the light, finally feeling like he could sleep in peace. But then, he stopped to think. Even though she had been aggressive, what if she went into berserker mode in the middle of the night? He turned over, but the poor girl was lying there, completely still, not reacting at all. He rested his head on the pillow again, concluding that the chances of her attacking now were pretty low. He decided to try sleeping until he heard a sound beside him. He told her to stay put. He was trying to fall asleep. 1 second of silence. He smirked, but then she made another noise and he told her to shut it. He turned asking if she was really going to keep this up all night. That's when he noticed she was trembling on the floor. Her expression was one of pain and he was confused. Meanwhile, in another room, Cheese had fallen asleep watching some high-quality content. Izao saw what was on the screen and immediately called it disgusting. He smacked the rat's face, demanding that he wake up. But Cheese just scratched his cheek and rolled over. Izao decided that if he was going to pretend to be asleep, then he'd have to handle this himself. Sometime later, he brought an insect feed and placed it right under Cheese's nose. Immediately, the rat shot up, vomiting. Cursing, he asked what the hell was wrong with his damn friend. But Izao simply replied that he was the one responsible for letting the disaster girl get so close to him. Then Izao demanded he hand over a blanket. He needed one. Cheese smirked, saying he already knew it was for the girl. The boy was always complaining about her, but his soft little heart couldn't bear to see her suffer. Izao, however, explained that tomorrow she had to go through several tests and needed a good night's sleep. Cheese told him to just use one of the 6 or 7 blankets they had. But Izao explained that he had one for each lunar cycle and day of the week. Second Sunday was the day of Ouroboros, so he used blankets representing the infinite cycle. Tuesday and Wednesday were for acquiring knowledge in alchemy, so those were his intelligence-enhancing blankets. Thursday was purification day, so he used the purple one, Master's favorite color. And Friday was for sharpening his criminal instincts, so he slept with a spade-patterned blanket. He was about to explain Saturday, but Cheese interrupted, saying he already knew. That was the infamous disaster blanket. Izao was surprised that he was exactly right, which was why he didn't have any to lend to the girl. Cheese sat down and told him to just give her the disaster blanket, since in theory, she was the disaster. Izao was shocked by the rat's flawless logic and realized he had no argument. He tried to protest, but the rat turned away, saying good night and ending the discussion. As he walked away, Izao wondered why a rat even needed a blanket. Standing in front of several safes, he opened the one labeled Saturday. He placed it on the ground and told her that this was an extremely precious gift, something the master was lending her. With that, she finally fell asleep, curled up under the image of a sinister creature. With dark circles under his eyes, he muttered that he should probably put the anti-revolt collar on her. But his brain was already exhausted. He couldn't react, he just collapsed into sleep. Some time passed, and she was no longer under the blankets. Instead, she was standing right next to Izao. Later, a crow held a clock in its beak. It dropped it straight into the mouth of the skeleton. The creature immediately began shouting that it was time for the greatest alchemist of the century to wake up. It repeated and repeated until our boy finally woke up, annoyed that he had forgotten to disable the damn thing because of that crazy girl. That's when he noticed something strange. A weird weight, an unusual breathing pattern. This boy had peculiar instincts. And the moment he realized what it might be, he asked himself, could it be? Of course it was. And he had no idea when she had climbed onto his bed. But there she was sleeping peacefully, not caring in the slightest. At that moment, he found himself thinking, she didn't have a single trait of the disaster she was supposed to be. Right then, Cheese swung the door open, asking how his night went. However, when he looked around, he didn't see the girl and immediately asked where she had gone. Izao said he had no idea. That was enough to make Cheese panic, saying that letting a creature like that roam free was extremely dangerous. Izao agreed it was an extreme threat. He ordered the big rat to go check the monitoring room immediately. Cheese started heading out, but then he noticed something strange. Something was trembling under the blanket. He called Izao's attention to it, but Izao just scoffed, asking if his friend had gone blind, as if a blanket could move on its own. But suddenly, disaster emerged from it, panting. Immediately, Izao tried to explain that she had crawled into his bed during the night. He had no idea what had happened. However, Cheese sat down beside him and nodded, saying he understood. Adolescence was a tough time for a boy. He didn't have to be embarrassed. He was happy for him. Izao cut him off and threw the stink bomb straight at his face. While his friend writhed in agony on the floor, Izao repeated himself. He had already explained that she was the one who climbed into his bed, so he needed to stop spouting nonsense. Sometime later in the experiment analysis room, Cheese ordered her to stop jumping so they could measure her height. With that, they discovered that the girl was 1.71 meters tall. Cheese turned to Izao and said that if he ever wanted to kiss her, he'd have to stand on his tiptoes, since she was 11 centimeters taller than him. Obviously, our boy protested, shouting that he didn't want that at all. The next test was her weight. She came in at 64 kilos. Izao found that odd. Just the components he had placed in her should have added up to at least 800 kilos in total. Then the rat announced it was time for the most critical measurement of all. With a grin, he said Izao got lucky. She had a perfect size 36. Next was the lung capacity test. Izao demonstrated taking the deepest breath possible and exhaling with all his might into the measuring device. The little bat on the scale lifted slightly, and she got excited. He handed it to her, saying it was her turn. She prepared herself, but she was holding her breath strangely, so he told her to just blow like he did. But it seemed she misunderstood completely, because she grabbed his face and blew all of her air directly into his mouth. The poor guy stumbled backward, tripping over the table. And of course that was when Cheese walked in, asking how the breathing test was going. While our boy gasped for air, the rat just nodded, saying he was starting to get used to it. Meanwhile, the Apocalypse girl was confused as to why the little bat didn't move at all. By then, Izzo was already at the sink, frantically rinsing his mouth. Cheese casually remarked that Izzo was probably the first Perserat in history to do something like this. Our boy snapped at him to shut up. Cheese just chuckled, pointing out that he'd been saying that a lot lately. But he did want to know, was Disaster's kiss any good? Right then, Izzo splashed water straight at him. The rat just laughed, saying Izzo didn't even need the mask. He had tested her dozens of times, she didn't have any viruses. Next was a flexibility test, which showed that she was within normal human limits. Then came the lower body strength test. Again, she had normal levels of strength. Even a hand grip test showed standard results. Izzo commented that considering all this, she was literally just an ordinary person. But Cheese argued that none of that mattered. She probably had a combat mode, that's where her real stats would show. Izzo agreed. It was time to activate that so-called combat mode. Cheese asked how, and Izzo responded. They just had to put her against the cruelest, most evil experiment they had. The scene shifted to a highly dangerous girl sitting inside a cage. She had even made a tiny doll of Izzo, saying she missed him. But Cheese immediately protested. This was too risky. Throwing anyone into a fight with test subject 0 was pure madness. They needed to do things gradually. The first opponent should be something weak, like a rabbit. However, Izzo grabbed a tiny rat and asked if this wasn't the weakest creature they had. Cheese snatched it away, declaring that in this facility, they never used rodents for experiments. Our boy picked up the rabbit and asked if Cheese really thought this would awaken her fighting instincts. But suddenly, she snatched the rabbit away and carried it to the corner. Cheese declared that this was undeniable proof. She had killer instincts. Izzo cheered, saying this wouldn't be as hard as he thought. But of course, she was just petting the rabbit. What the hell did this idiot expect? He collapsed to the ground in disappointment, but then he reached into his pocket, pulled something out, and injected it into the rabbit. Cheese immediately demanded to know what he had just done. Our boy revealed that it was Madness Mutation number 6. Suddenly, the rabbit's eyes changed, and it started twitching violently in her arms. A massive shadow loomed over the girl, and the rabbit finally transformed. Izzo smirked, saying that to awaken her powers, her opponent had to be at least this strong. For now, the creature's name would be Super Wild Rabbit No. 1. The beast was already snorting smoke and winding up a punch, and our boy was eager to see how this fight would unfold. However, Cheese was amazed at how Izzo really had no sense of mercy. As the monster lunged, the rat asked if he wanted to bet whether she would dodge the punch or take it head-on. Izzo said that whoever lost would have to clean the base for a week, and he was certain she would take the hit. With that, the rabbit smashed down with full force. Both of them flinched. The area was empty. Not even the monster knew where the girl had gone. Then the creature felt something strange crawling up its arm. When it looked at its shoulder, she was there. The beast collapsed. But even then, she was just gently petting it. Even the monster itself seemed to blush a little. At that moment, Cheese realized that this girl had zero desire to fight. The next scene had them heading straight for the highly dangerous zone. Apparently, they were going to visit number 0, but the rat still thought it was too risky. However, Izzo replied that if she died, then she was a failure. And a failure only served to teach him how to increase the chances of the next experiment's success. Behind the massive door was number 0. Izzo and Cheese both put on their masks, but his friend kept insisting it still wasn't too late. They should just give up since they had invested too much in this girl. However, Izzo said he needed to see her charge forward with the intent to kill her target. Otherwise, he would never witness her true transformation. He had failed too much recently, and he was tired of it. But then she gently patted his head, leaving him momentarily stunned. He grabbed her hand, reminding her, an experiment couldn't afford to pity its creator. She stepped closer, telling him that she would use all the power she had, because if she didn't, she would die at the hands of number 0. Her very existence was meant to become the strongest biological weapon and help him conquer the world. Cheese, however, argued that he should appreciate her looks. It was such a waste to put all of that into combat. Meanwhile, behind the massive gate, number 0 was counting tiny Uzaos. She was making little puppet versions of him. This creature was an extremely high-risk entity, a beast of the Black Plague named Lucille. Just then, someone called her name. She turned around. It was Izzo, saying he had come to talk. She turned into a black mist, gripping the cage's bars, and her voice lit up with excitement. It had been exactly 1,322 days since they last saw each other. But Izzo simply stated that he was there to inform her. He had finally created the absolute disaster. She was no longer the strongest creature in his possession. Lucille was shocked. Immediately, she denied it, saying it was impossible. She was the most powerful being in this entire lab. Izzo simply told Cheese to bring in the final disaster. But she had already run forward and hugged Izzo. Clutching the cage, Lucille was confused. No, this wasn't confusion. It was jealousy. She snarled, demanding that the filthy blonde take her hands off Izzo. The little disaster hid behind him, and our boy introduced her to Lucille, the final disaster, the strongest creation he had ever made. If Lucille wanted to reclaim her title as the strongest experiment, she would have to defeat the blonde. Lucille bit her lip in rage, then grinned. Fine, but if she won, then Izzo would have to spend an entire day with her. He agreed to the deal immediately. Then she added if he stayed for a day, he would also have to let her hug him while he slept. But our boy immediately said that was way too much. This Lucille was undeniably strong, worthy of being experiment number 0. She told him not to worry. She would crush his new creation. Izao walked away, saying she just had to prove it. He left through the door, warning the final disaster. If she didn't fight this time, she would really die. And if she died to Lucille, he wouldn't feel the slightest bit of remorse, because that would only mean she was a failure. Furthermore, he wouldn't interfere or try to save her. She looked confused until he untied the cord that connected them. The door slammed shut in front of her, and she flinched in shock. This girl just kept suffering. It was starting to feel cruel. She banged against the door, but Izao stood on the other side, clearly unfazed. He muttered that he was right. This was how a true Persered descendant should treat their experiments. Finally, everything was back on track. He then headed to the monitoring room. She's asked about the conversation, but Izao just ordered him to release Lucille. The rat was irritated, but still pressed the button. The cage began to rise, and Lucille stretched her limbs, saying it had been far too long since she could properly move. The room was filled with cameras, and she immediately looked at one, telling them both to prepare themselves. They were about to witness an incredible spectacle. She's immediately handed Izao a bag of chips, saying this was going to be a good one. But Izao grumbled. He was getting sick of everything tasting like cheese. The rat got offended, saying that he never used to complain about this before. Then he assured him, if Lucille actually went for the kill, the collar would activate, cutting off Disaster's powers. It was time for another bet. Who would win this fight? The rat bet on Lucille. If he won, he wanted control of the TV remote for a week. Izao bet on the final Disaster, because if she didn't win, she would die. Inside the chamber, Lucille told her to stop banging on the door. It was impossible to open. Then she started wondering, what was up with this girl? She didn't have the slightest desire to fight, but she activated her powers anyway, saying it didn't matter. Once she finished her off, she would have Izao all to herself. At that moment, she said things were getting dangerous. Lucille was advancing, and the Disaster girl hadn't reacted at all. Lucille reached out, preparing to absorb her as her next nutrient. But suddenly, something grabbed her arm. It was the little blonde Disaster. Lucille had no idea how she moved so fast. Immediately, the two boys grew excited. Finally, she was entering combat mode. They gave a high five, thrilled that things were finally getting serious. But then the little blonde simply started walking. Lucille was confused. What was she trying to do? Then she pointed at the door, and that was when both of them realized. She was asking Lucille to help her break it open. Obviously, experiment number 0 was furious at that ridiculous request, but the little blonde just smiled and nodded. That was exactly what she wanted. At that moment, the monster started laughing and went completely insane. She turned to the camera, addressing little Izao, saying that this last creation of his was nothing but an idiot. She grabbed the girl's arm and said she would show her the easiest way out of this room. Lucille's poison began to spread. She warned that the Black Plague virus would turn her into a pile of bones in no time. The blonde collapsed to the ground while Lucille laughed, saying it was far too easy to defeat this so-called disaster experiment. She then grabbed her by the face and told her to always remember. Little Izao belonged to her. On the final disaster's body panel, red alerts filled the screen. She's warned that the virus was spreading at an extreme rate, compromising both her organs and her entire bloodstream. Izao said that was impossible, since the blood they used for her was completely immune to any type of virus. But there she was on the ground, clearly and severely infected. Lucille sat there laughing, saying this wasn't even fun. She shouted at him to stop this immediately, but Izao told him to calm down. He explained that only 30% of her blood, 42% of her organs, and 38% of her nerves were infected, meaning nothing lethal. He was certain that the moment she reached the brink of death, her powers would activate. However, Lucille was stomping on the girl's head. Calling out to Izao, she asked if this was all he had to offer. While the blonde couldn't say anything, Lucille taunted her. Where was that burst of energy she had when she begged for help to open the door? She shouted at him to stop once again because the virus had already spread to 70% of her body. But Izao replied that she had a mechanical heart, which was impossible to infect. Besides, the virus hadn't reached her brain. Lucille scoffed, saying that it seemed like Izao didn't care about the girl at all. And if that was the case, then it was time to end this. The virus seemed to intensify, spreading throughout her entire body. The blonde began to float, and Lucille smirked, saying she would now begin absorption. Biting into her cheek, she noted that, for such a flawed experiment, she actually tasted pretty good. The plague beast then sank her teeth into the girl's stomach, saying that now the real feast would begin. Shees urgently announced that he was activating the collar. 90% of that experiment's body had already been compromised. But just as he was about to press the button, Izao grabbed his hand. The rat asked what he was doing, but the boy insisted. The time hadn't come yet. Shees thought his friend had lost his mind. Did he seriously want to watch Lucille devour the experiment? But Izao snapped at him to shut up. You're just a stupid rat. You only care about her because she's pretty. You've never been this involved with the other experiments. You can't forget the true goal of the Perseid family. Both Lucille and the girl were just tools for the real ambition. But then, a trembling voice called out, Master. The screen was flashing with alerts, and he saw that the request had come from the girl. Cheese was shocked to see that the disaster had spoken, asking if Izzo had taught her anything. He replied that maybe, just a little lesson the night before. A little earlier, when she tried to climb onto his bed, he had kicked her off, warning her that experiments didn't sleep with him. But when he glanced at her, she looked shaken and sad. So he cleared his throat and said, if she called him master, he would make an exception, letting her lie there for 30 minutes. Even though her vocal cords had been removed in the past, the new body he created obviously had no injuries. However, even as she tried, nothing came out. That's when he realized the truth. She had vocal cords, but she had forgotten how to speak. He leaned down and told her to repeat after him. He exaggerated the mouth movements, slowly forming the word, master, person. She watched intently, but still couldn't say anything. The boy was cruel. He wondered how someone could be so slow. She tried again, but all that came out was a tiny squeak. He covered his face, realizing that apparently there was no helping it. He turned away, telling her to just go to sleep already. But after returning to her blanket, she kept trying over and over to repeat the movements he had shown her, until just as she was about to fall asleep. For the first time, she whispered, master. Back in the battle, she was calling out for her master, but Lucille scoffed, saying her pleas were pointless. She was nothing but a failure to him, and now it was time for her to be devoured. But right then, Lucille's collar activated, and she collapsed to the ground. A thermal discharge coursed through her body and she couldn't move. She called out for Izzo. Obviously, he was the one who had pressed the button. Izzo nonchalantly admitted that Cheese was right. It would be too risky to lose the implants they had placed in her. Cheese immediately asked if he only pressed it because his creation had called him master. He scoffed. Of course not. I would never do something like that. Now he was going to retrieve this useless tool. Cheese wanted to follow, but Izzo stopped him. Not necessary. Lying motionless on the ground, the final disaster remained still, until suddenly, someone in a hooded cloak appeared. She turned her head, calling out, master. But Izzo immediately shut her down. Stop saying that. He scowled. You don't deserve to call me that. He was cold, but at the same time. He picked her up in his arms and carried her out of there. She kept repeating master, but he kept telling her to be quiet and prepared to go into confinement. As he walked past Lucille, she asked why. In all the other experiments he had sent her to fight, when they were on the brink of death, he never interfered. So why did he save this girl who was inferior to her every way, whether in physical strength, combat power, or intelligence? Izzo replied that it was because she had numerous transplanted organs, and if she were devoured, the experiment would have trouble continuing. Lucille then responded that in that case, there was no problem. Meanwhile, Cheese was reading some high-quality material, thinking that Izzo should stop with these little theatrics while also noting that the White Queen had some rather impressive qualities. But suddenly, something strange happened. Lucille's stabilized temperature began to drop. The alarm started blaring and Cheese jumped in shock. Izzo was about to leave when he received a message from Cheese telling him to get out of there immediately. Our boy asked why he was so scared, and Cheese warned that Lucille's suppression collar had broken. He froze, and as he turned around, it was already too late. She was right next to him. Lucille sighed, saying it was a shame, but this time the collar wasn't going to work. As a good alchemist, he should know that viruses sometimes adapt to what they are exposed to. For over 1,000 days, she had repeatedly activated its effect, and finally in the last week, the plague viruses in her body began adapting to the cold and found a way to resist it. Izzo tried to calm himself. He couldn't provoke her any further, so he told Lucille that she won and he would fulfill his promise. But she laughed and said that spending a day with her was no longer enough. He removed his mask and she looked at him with curiosity. She placed a hand on his face and the virus began spreading across his body. For some reason, even though this boy was on the verge of death, his face was turning red. Lucille was absolutely delighted, saying that she could finally understand every activity of his cells. Looking at the screen, Cheese was panicking, but Lucille told him to calm down. She had placed the virus inside him, but it was still dormant because she didn't want to harm her little Izzo. The virus started spreading toward his mouth, and suddenly, she noticed something very strange. The Black Plague virus encountered some of the final disaster's saliva cells. Obviously, at that moment, she became furious. She understood exactly what happened. She grabbed the blonde's face, demanding to know how she dared to kiss her Izzo. Cheese knew there was no point in trying to lie. After all, she had a cellular level recognition ability. Once again, her virus began invading the final disaster's entire body. She lifted her high into the air, declaring that this was unforgivable. She would invade every single cell in her body and ensure she suffered the worst possible death. As the poor final disaster struggled in pain, Izzo had no idea how to get out of this situation. Lucille had total control over her body and cells, making her resistant to any type of weapon. The freezing collar had been the only solution, and now without it, he had no idea what to do. He still had the void substance, but it was still in testing and the entire base could be destroyed if he used it. Watching as she crushed his experiment, he wondered if there was truly no solution. At that moment, Cheese said he knew what to do, and Izzo immediately asked how. The rat explained that Lucille had a deep obsession with him, and that was the only way to stop her. Meanwhile, Lucille was muttering that she couldn't understand why she couldn't enter the brain or the heart, but she would consume everything else. That's when Izzo called out to her. He pointed the slime transformer at himself, saying this was his final warning. The monster scoffed, asking if she was really being threatened over that idiot, to which he replied that the girl wasn't important, but the parts he had transplanted into her were. Without them, he couldn't conquer the world or restore the Perseid family's glory, which would take away his entire reason for living. Cheese muttered to himself, admiring his acting skills. And surprisingly, Lucille seemed to agree. Issa was shocked at how easily she gave in. Maybe this was the way to control her, even if it was humiliating. But she kept devouring the final disaster, saying that after consuming everything, she would help him conquer the world anyway. The virus continued spreading, and Isaiah realized he had no choice but to use his trump card. Cheese grinned, saying it looked like he had just been stalling since he had a backup plan all along. But the truth was that this trump card was embarrassing, and Isao really didn't want to use it. So he sighed and told Lucille that if she let the girl live, he would sleep with her in his arms for the next few nights. She immediately froze, eyes wide. She approached him, asking if that was really true. In her mind, she was already imagining how wonderful it would be. Isao could tell from her reaction that she was picturing way too much. So he asked if she agreed. She hummed thoughtfully, and then said that maybe, just maybe, she could forgive that piece of trash. But she had two conditions. He asked what they were, and she grinned. The first was that she would be released from her cage and the girl would take her place, locked away forever. Isao knew he would figure out another way to suppress her later, but for now he agreed. Then she moved on to the second condition. She started extracting the virus and ordered the trash girl to wake up. She told her to watch carefully, because she was about to do something. She grabbed Izao's face, saying she was furious that that damn girl had stolen his first kiss. He already knew what was coming and tried to explain that the final disaster didn't even understand these concepts. But it was too late. Lucille had already launched her attack. The final disaster, of course, saw it happening and began to wonder why her chest was hurting so much. Our boy couldn't break free, and Lucille was relentless with her full assault. He kept pushing away the damned woman who wouldn't let go, while Cheese muttered that, as a friend, he was happy. Or maybe he was sad. He wasn't quite sure how to feel. The torture finally ended, and Lucille stood there completely satisfied. She even commented that just like before, he was still using the same lavender-flavored toothpaste. Meanwhile, Izzo was frantically spraying his mouth, but Lucille just smiled, saying it was pointless. Her cells had already invaded his body. As he collapsed to the ground, the final disaster kept feeling that strange pain. She didn't understand what was happening. Meanwhile, the virus was running through her blood, until suddenly her red blood cells detected the virus and attacked it. Lucille turned back only to see that the girl had been purified in an instant. She started to say it was impossible, but before she could finish, she was grabbed by the neck and lifted off the ground. The girl's arm transformed, and both alchemists instantly recognized it, the arm of the Ashen Angel. The final disaster started speaking, saying she hated something. It wasn't clear what, since she still couldn't talk properly. But Lucille was burning. The scene then shifted to a man standing in the middle of a desolate wasteland. He muttered that the creature had already consumed all the fluids and poisons he had given her. So why wasn't she losing consciousness? She prepared an attack and hurled it toward him. He lowered his head, saying it didn't matter. Kachao had managed to escape the island, and that was enough. But then, out of nowhere, a towering woman with purple hair appeared, scolding him, telling him to stop sacrificing himself without permission. A barrier materialized, blocking the attack, and he called her name. The blow was neutralized, and a moment later, she cupped his face, telling him, from now on, he wasn't allowed to abandon her like that. He leaned in closer, about to kiss her, but instead he got stomped in the face, and the woman coldly stated that the kiss scene wouldn't be shown, because she didn't want to see his disgusting tongue. Apparently, all of this was a movie recording, and if you're confused, so am I. I'm just following along, and it seems like this is part of the story, so we're not lost. It turns out the phoenix in the scene was real. They were even feeding her shells to eat. And all of this was happening in Gordon City, on the set of a movie starring the White Queen, which, if I remember correctly, was the same story our rat boy was reading earlier. The White Queen wasn't just the second-ranked hero of the Golden City. She was also the most famous actress in the world. The poor guy acting in the movie was immobilized, and the woman beside him apologized, saying he was the only person they could find. But the White Queen scoffed, saying this man was nothing compared to the one she truly liked. His expressions were terrible, poorly done, emotionless. The assistant nervously admitted that they knew he wasn't up to her standards, but they were running out of money after auditioning over 2,000 people. But the Queen just shrugged, saying it didn't matter. They could just take $200 million from her bank. That was when someone ran up with urgent news, and she asked what they mean. What was this about her bank being robbed? We all know exactly who did it. A woman reported that the criminals had used a gas device. It was a normal human and someone who looked like a rat. She showed the device, and the moment the White Queen saw it, she recognized the symbol. The masked woman added that even Homunculi, an extremely competent officer, had been turned into his slime by an unknown weapon. She was about to suggest gathering reinforcements, but the White Queen cut her off, ordering that no one interfere. The masked woman protested, saying it was impossible to handle alone. That region was the execution zone of the heroes. But the Queen began transforming. Her hair turned white, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly radiance. She stepped forward, declaring that the so-called execution zone of the heroes was irrelevant to her. And those criminals, they seemed to have the answers she had been searching for a long time. She commanded her group to abandon everything else, to track those criminals down as quickly as possible. The actress on set hesitated and asked what they should do about the movie. The White Queen simply said to cancel everything for now. She turned to leave and suddenly stopped. She had almost forgotten about him. She walked over to the unfortunate actor, asking if he really wanted to kiss her. He stammered, trying to apologize, but she conjured an extreme ice block and shoved it into his mouth. She watched him suffer for a moment, then remarked that he was lucky. She would forgive him this time. And as she walked away, she coldly stated, "No one in this world is allowed to touch my lips." The scene shifted, a fallen bucket on the ground, a glimpse into someone's past. A woman sternly told a young girl that she wasn't allowed to play until she finished cleaning the floor. The child clutched a teddy bear, one that looked remarkably similar to the one the final disaster also had. The woman yanked the bear from her hands and stomped on it. The girl pleaded, begging, "Aunt Jimin, please stop." But the man beside her was the one who got slapped. The figure who appeared to be the White Queen's father grabbed her, telling Jimin not to treat her like that. But Jimin simply reminded him, it was her who took them off the streets. It was her who made sure they didn't starve to death. The father, called Mailer, had no response to that. A man suddenly appeared behind Jimin and asked if this was the family providing children to serve as soldiers. She smiled and said yes, that the offering was this girl. The father, however, was terrified, demanding to know who this man was and why he had entered without knocking. The mysterious man replied that the Ming Quan did not need permission to enter any place in this kingdom. The father flinched upon hearing that name and turned to Jimin, asking what she was thinking. She responded that it was obvious she was securing a good home for this child. The girl would be taken by this organization and trained from a young age to become a soldier. The man stepped closer, asking if this was the girl, and Jimin told him not to be deceived. She was young, but she was strong. She could even endure 3 days without eating. The man observed her carefully, seeming to like the determination in her eyes. He declared that she would be taken, and in the next second, he was already leaving with her. Now I get it. This was actually the backstory of the final disaster, huh? And now we're back to the present. She was in the room, looking at a piece of that story. Meanwhile, the alchemists were analyzing the rabbit, which was mysteriously losing a ton of fur from its chest, and they had no idea why. She's asked if the disaster was okay, and Aizo replied that, at the very least, her vital signs were stable. A quick flashback to a few years ago. A girl was using healing magic, channeling power into the leader of the underworld hounds known as the Hunting Master. The man from the earlier story, called Doberman, introduced himself to the master, who asked about the assassination. Doberman listed several names of allies, stating that all of them had died. The Hunting Master was in disbelief. How was it possible for so many to have failed in killing the traitors of the Latoma dynasty? Doberman clarified everyone had died, except for Yorkshire. She had disappeared. It seemed like everyone had dog names. The master was visibly shaken and thin. We were back in the present, with Iso pacing around the room. He suddenly shouted that he had an idea, and Cheese groaned, telling him to stop yelling so much. Iso declared that he was tired of calling her final disaster, so she needed a codename, and her codename would be Alpina. He asked if Cheese wasn't curious about why he chose that name, but the rat just told him to get to the point. He recalled that his master once said that Alpina was her favorite flower. It symbolized young women. However, he told the rat that he wasn't going to explain the meaning behind the name. With that, the two of them celebrated. She had officially become an extremely dangerous experiment. Isawa commented that her biggest advantage was her gentle personality, but the biggest problem was how unstable her powers were. The first mission was to understand how she activated her arm. The first time was when she was afraid of sleeping alone in the cage. She's immediately claimed that the solution was obvious. She activated her power whenever she wanted to sleep next to Izao. Izao ignored that and said the second time was when he crouched, and she must have interpreted it as him being attacked by Lucille. That was when she activated the thermal pressure vaporization cannon. She's immediately interrupted, asking since when it had such a ridiculous name. Izao proudly stated that it had that name since the moment she obliterated Lucille, and he thought it sounded awesome. Cheese strongly disagreed. Izao then pointed out the most interesting thing about the attack. It had nearly reached the temperature of the sun, even managing to completely vaporize the Black Plague virus. Cheese commented that if Lucille hadn't been equipped with the ice collar, she definitely would have died. At that moment, Lucille was still submerged, suffering in recovery. Suddenly, Alpina's stomach rumbled. Izao turned to look, and she clearly looked like she was starving. Then she pointed to herself and said, "Hungry, master." Apparently, she had learned to talk out of nowhere. She's asked why they had never seen Izao feed her before. Izao replied that he simply assumed a creature destined to bring the final disaster wouldn't need something as primitive as food. However, she didn't need to worry. They had plenty of highly nutritious and energy-rich meals. Sometime later, Cheese stared in disbelief, asking if he seriously prepared that for her. But Izao confidently said yes, it was perfect. The poor wild dragon, who had been peacefully sleeping, was about to become food. The dragon woke up groggy, asking what the two of them were doing there. Then his expression suddenly turned friendly, saying he was desperate to get out of the restrictive gear he was wearing. Izao smiled, telling him that he would indeed have a chance to redeem himself. The dragon was excited, until Izao finished his sentence, saying he was about to become the girl's next meal. His expression immediately changed. Cheese protested, saying that the Storm Malice dragon was the only true dragon they had, and it would be a waste to throw him away like this. But Izo disagreed. He believed that if Alpina consumed him, she would unlock a new form. He ordered her to devour him. She repeated his words, and suddenly, she was on the dragon's horns. The poor thing was crying in desperation, begging for his life, swearing that he would never talk bad about the boss again. But Ezo coldly replied, "Too late." Alpina got ready and chomped down on his horn. But obviously, that only ended up hurting her mouth like an idiot. Some time later, they were boiling instant noodles instead, so that's what she was going to eat. 3 minutes later, it was all ready and Alpina's eyes were shining. Our boy handed over the chopsticks and immediately asked what the crazy girl was doing. Obviously, she was eating with her hands without a care in the world. He warned her to be careful since the food was hot. Meanwhile, Chess was wondering if she really didn't know how to use chopsticks or if she was just that starving. However, she kept eating until she suddenly stopped for a second and cried and said it was delicious. Izao, as cruel as always, just told her to stop crying over instant noodles because it was embarrassing. Chess, on the other hand, understood that she probably hadn't eaten many good things in her life. The protagonist then said that it was just like his friend, who, being a rat, used to sneak into this place to steal cheese until the day he got caught and almost got shot. But Chess told him to shut up, saying that he had heard that the protagonist begged for milk until he was 3 years old. Izao threw his chopstick at his friend, saying it was his mother's fault for telling him there was something inside the magic box. The two started fighting, things flying everywhere, while Alpinia ate peacefully. Our boy called the rat a filthy thief, but Chess replied that stealing cheese wasn't an insult for a rat. It was actually a compliment. With that, she finally finished eating, handed the bowl back to our boy, and said it was delicious. He then wiped her mouth, saying it was ridiculous how messy she got just from eating something like that. However, her stomach was still growling. A little while later, there were piles and piles of instant noodles, and she was still devouring them. But at least now she had learned how to use chopsticks. Once again, she wiped her mouth and handed the bowl to Izao. He told Chess to prepare another one, but Chess informed him that, unfortunately, that was the last one. An hour later, Izao was desperate, telling her to stay away. It was his last box of chocolate, and he begged her to show some mercy. Meanwhile, he wondered why she was acting like this now with chocolate when she had been normal with instant noodles. The girl was crawling like a monster, looking at him with a pleading expression, saying she wanted more of that thing. Seeing himself cornered, Izao had no choice. He immediately opened the wafers and started eating. His mouth was full, but man, she came for the theft. The poor guy had no options left, and now you might think this girl is going too far. Let the guy eat his wafers in peace. A while later, he was lying on the ground, completely done, but the hunger wasn't over. At that moment, Chess got scared. He was already standing in front of his cheese shelf, prepared to defend it with his life. This was the secret stash he had worked hard for years to build. However, Alpinia crouched down and started sniffing. She immediately realized she was on the ground, placed her hand down, and activated her angel arm. The moment the big rat looked up, the ceiling was melting. He jumped back, screaming that they were doomed, and at that moment, she dived in. As soon as she stood up, he pointed his weapon at her and warned that stealing Izo's sweets was one thing, but this cheese was sacred. But in just 1 second, she was already in his face with the angel arm, touched the weapon, and snatched it from him. The poor guy had no way to hold on to it, as the heat almost burned his little hands. The moment he looked ahead, the entire weapon had already melted into nothing. The poor guy collapsed to the ground, knowing the end was near. She grabbed the first box and started eating his cheese. A few seconds later, all of them were empty on the floor. Meanwhile, the big rat lay on the ground, saying this was truly the final disaster. Meanwhile, in the monster prison, the Abyssal Eye asked the dragon if he was okay since he had heard that he was supposed to be fed to disaster. However, the dragon said they gave up on that plan since he was a very strong dragon with an extremely resistant body. He was about to show that his horn was the strongest part, but at that exact moment, the thing completely shattered. He screamed in despair, saying that his most majestic part was gone. A little while later, the final disaster was back, locked up where she had been created. Iso said that after countless tests, it had been proven that she had zero resistance when it came to sweets, especially chocolate. As soon as she tasted it, she would enter a hunger frenzy where nothing would survive, even going so far as to use her angel arm. At that moment, he turned around and asked why his friend wasn't saying anything. The big rat was foaming at the mouth, saying that she had eaten 400 blocks of the most expensive cheese in existence. His vintage collection was over 140 years old. And that was why this perverse experiment needed to be punished in the most severe way possible. He prepared his saw, saying that first he would start by cutting her into at least 1,200 pieces. Azal, however, simply commented that she was still cute. Then the rat said he would wash her eyes with the two cruelest fluids they possessed. Again, Aso said she was still cute, but the rat insisted that she deserved to be bitten by the brain-sucking mosquito. Yet again, Aso said she was cute. Finally, the rat said that at the very least she needed a few smacks to learn her lesson. Even though Izzo had been saying she was cute, he was actually thinking that she really did need to be punished. Otherwise, they would never get to eat any more delicious food in this place. Later, He asked if she was ready for her punishment, and for a cruel alchemist, I expected something a lot more chemical, to be honest. He thought that since she had such a childish mind, the best form of punishment was still to cause pain. With that, he delivered the first attack, and the poor girl cried out in pain. While she was being struck without mercy, he told her that this was for being greedy and eating all the chocolates and all that cheese. Sometime later, the girl really got sucked in and was now crying desperately. Izzo told Chess that this would teach her not to repeat the same mistake. The rat agreed, but said the real problem now was that they had nothing left to eat in this base except for experimental food. The protagonist's stomach growled, and he agreed, saying that they hadn't even had dinner yet. With that, she got beaten up again. Then the rat mentioned another big problem. When they went out to buy or do something, were they just going to leave her alone in the base? Izzo said that was impossible because she would destroy everything while they were gone. Looking down at the poor girl, he said he had no choice but to take her along. Sometime later, he was putting on his vest, and the rat was fastening his belt. He adjusted the buckle, threw on his cape, packed his poisons, and it was time to go hunt for food. Meanwhile, Alpinia just stood there, staring at the two of them. They taught her to raise her arm and strike some poses to look cool the next time something like this happened. Then Izzo ordered the activation of the Matrix teleportation, targeting the Beacon District. The teleportation circle was gigantic, and the three of them were right in the middle of it. She grabbed Izzo's hand, making him wonder how weird it was or how much her personality fluctuated. With that, Chess started counting to 3 and then covered her eyes. The teleportation activated, and an alchemy circle appeared in another part of the city. With that, our boy emerged, spreading his arms and welcoming them to the paradise of crime, the Golden City. They were standing on top of the city's lighthouse, one of the 32 teleportation points. Izzo said that out of all the places, this one was still his favorite, since he could see everything from above. Disaster took a look and was impressed. Meanwhile, the big rat asked if they were heading straight for the megastore. But the boy replied that for now, they would stop by a clothing store because the girl looked peculiar. They would go down Camilla Avenue, where there was definitely something perfect for her. The rat, however, pointed out that that place only had expensive clothes, and on top of that, their bank money was already running low. To which Izzo responded that that was exactly why they would also use this opportunity to scout for their next heist. He told the girl to hold his hand, and as soon as she did, he jumped off the lighthouse with her. Mid-fall, he activated anti-gravity alchemy. The symbol on his neck glowed, and she slowly opened her eyes, until she realized they were floating. Our boy led the way, while the big rat said that as soon as they landed, he wanted at least one hot dog. The scene then shifted to a part of the city known as Amberlit. In the middle of the fountain stood a golden statue of a woman. Alchemy Girl was fascinated, while Izzo wondered why the rat was taking so long just to buy a hot dog. Then he noticed a little boy standing in front of him, saying that his little sister was climbing really high. Our boy laughed, thinking that was impossible. There were way too many people patrolling that area. That's when he realized the boy had said little sister. He looked to the side, and sure enough, as she was climbing the statue. From below, he shouted for her to get down immediately, but she just sat on the statue's head and waved at her master. Meanwhile, the rat was arguing with the hot dog vendor, saying that he had told the guy 1,000 times not to put anything sour on his hot dog. He took a bite and celebrated, saying it took a while, but finally had the perfect taste. Then he remembered Izzo. At that moment, he saw 2 policemen walking by and pointing up. Noticing the crowd gathering around the statue, he wondered how it was possible for him to disappear for just 10 seconds and for all this to happen. The officer grabbed a megaphone, saying that the Camilla statue was extremely important, so she needed to come down immediately. But the girl just shook her head, signaling no. The rat knew that climbing that statue without authorization was a serious crime in the City of Heroes. He put on his sunglasses, knowing he had to act fast. First, he was going to flee and leave his partners behind, because that's how a villain survives. Meanwhile, Izzo threw a flashbang in the air, which exploded in front of the statue and everyone around it. As he did, he muttered to himself that he would never take that woman out of the lab again. The police officers were then all taken down by the big rat, using his tail to wield a knife. He ordered Izzo to grab the girl because, at that moment, he was going to act like a hero. But our boy replied that he saw very well that the rat had just tried to escape alone. One of the officers started to regain consciousness, but as soon as he tried to stand up, he tripped over his own uniform and face-planted onto the ground. Apparently, the trio had escaped with ease and were already in another part of the city. However, our boy was exhausted, saying that one day this idiot was going to get them all killed. That's when someone nearby told them to get their filthy hands off and move away from the store. The employee beside him said that the golden legacy was extremely important and couldn't be tainted by people like them. But Izzo just asked Chess what they were going to do about this guy complaining that they were dirty. The rat immediately started licking himself, having fun with it. That's when the shopkeeper threatened to find someone to take care of the two of them, until Chess stuck a banknote to his saliva and the guy was horrified. He kept making a sequence of money, and Izzo asked what they were going to do now that the money they were supposed to pay for the mess was all stuck together. The moment the guy changed his attitude, he said that a little saliva was nothing, considering what great customers they were. He happily went to peel the money off with ease while, from inside, Izzo waved him goodbye. A little while later, he asked the young master what kind of clothing he was looking for. Our boy said it wasn't for him but for the girl. The seller approached Disaster and asked what such a distinguished young lady was looking for. She looked back with her finger up the mannequin's nose and giggled. The guy was stunned by how beautiful she was, thinking he had never seen such perfection. He hadn't really noticed it when she was outside, but now he could tell she was truly different. Watching Izao ordering her around, he started thinking that this poor goddess was being enslaved by that weirdo. That's when Izao told him to hurry up and bring the best dresses they had. She would try them on one by one. With that, the women brought a whole bunch of them and immediately took the girl away as she called out for her master. He just told her not to make a mess. It was a simple outfit change. He sat down and the guy served him some tea, but our boy said he wasn't in the mood for that. He called out to the filthy rat and told him to hand over the soda he had seen in hiding. Chess handed it over, but told him to quit nagging. He was busy looking for a cool hat. 20 minutes passed and Isao wondered why it was taking so long. One of the women called for help, saying that it wasn't easy to dress this girl. When he pulled back the curtain, she was there, trembling. He then told her to stop making a fuss because he was right outside. With that, the women continued helping her while she kept calling out for her master, to which he responded from outside that he was right there. She called for him again, and once more, he said he was right there. She called for him again, and yet again, he assured her he was there. Then she stepped out wearing a crimson evening gown that cost 159,000. Isao thought to himself that she actually looked good in it. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper asked what he thought. The piece was extremely exclusive. The guy said that his girlfriend deserved something like that, but Izao quickly corrected him, saying she wasn't his girlfriend, she was his servant. If he called her that again, he would have his tongue cut off. The seller was shocked that this guy was buying something so expensive for his servant. He must be filthy rich. But then Izao said that this dress barely met his standards, so they'd better bring something better. The seller assured him not to worry. All the wealthiest people in the city shop here. She then appeared wearing the sacred bloom dress, priced at 300,000. Izao admitted that it was pretty, but it lacked dignity. He told them to bring another. Then she tried on the Golden Empress gown minus 340,000. Man, the price just kept going up. Izao was speechless for a second while the seller kept calling out to the young master. The man explained that this dress was originally made for the Empress herself, so surely it must be to his liking. But at that exact moment, a Batman-style limousine pulled up in front of the store. The staff rolled out a carpet, and suddenly, the shopkeeper looked nervous, saying he had forgotten about today's visitor. He told the three of them to hide and stay quiet, or they would all be in serious danger. Then a door opened, revealing a girl, frame by frame. She was dressed in traditional Japanese clothing and flanked by two demons. From the Haigong family, this was Rina, though she seemed poor, considering she didn't even have sandals. As soon as she stepped onto the ground, she turned and told Akaningu that her feet were cold. The demon woman apologized and said she would take care of it. She prepared a flame attack and set a blaze from the store. Meanwhile, the rest of the servants were still rolling out the carpet. As soon as she entered the shop, the vendor greeted her as Lady Korea. I thought her name was Rene. Guess we'll find out soon enough. She simply said that she had heard the Gothic Lolita dress was being sold there and she wanted to see it. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, the three were quietly watching. Chess immediately pointed out that, judging by her name, the girl belonged to the Korea family, which was a problem. Isao knew that this was one of the most noble families in the city. Meanwhile, Disaster remained silent. What our boy found strange was that a family like this usually never left the Golden District. So what were they doing here? The carpet was still being stretched out when a shopkeeper told her to follow him. In front of something covered with a cloth, he told her that this was what she was looking for. However, when he turned to look, she had stopped in place. The carpet had run out, and the servants apologized. Akatengu immediately cursed them out, demanding to know how they dared not bring enough golden carpet. She declared this to be a severe mistake for the servants of the Korea family, and that she had no idea what to do about it. Man, the guy was sweating bullets. He had already drawn his blade as if they were about to put an end to their suffering. The two of them screamed that they would make the sacrifice of the heart, but before they could, their blades disintegrated. The other servant, named Shinku, had activated the Buddha's forgiveness technique. One of the servants thanked him, but was immediately struck in the back, causing both of them to collapse in agony. There they lay, unmoving, as Shinku told her to proceed in peace. Man, was all this really necessary? The girl walked over them like they were stepping stones. Chess even asked if every noble in the center was really this arrogant. But Izao was smiling, saying that this was a great opportunity. His friend wanted to know what he meant, and he said it was obvious. The perfect chance to pull off a kidnapping. Someone who was supposed to be in the Golden Zone. The rat, however, said that killing heroes sounded way less dangerous than kidnapping a member of one of the most powerful families. Izao insisted, saying that this was how they were going to reclaim the glory that the Perserid family once had. But Chessie was still scared, pointing out that this entire city was built by the families of these people, so there was no doubt they would be hunted down until death. Meanwhile, Renee continued stepping over her servants until she was face to face with the dress. The shopkeeper said he was about to present a true work of art and pulled off the cloth. At the same time, Izzo was teasing his friend, saying he was turning into a coward. That was when they both heard a scream. The so-called Gothic Lolita dress was completely destroyed, or maybe it just had a very peculiar design. The shopkeeper collapsed to the floor, while Renee demanded to know if this was truly the dress that the magical scissors had prepared for her. Akatingu had already drawn her blade, and Shinku declared that this time not even Buddha would be able to save them. Izzo turned to his friend and asked if this was his doing. Chess apologized, saying that the shopkeeper had been really annoying, so he decided to have a little fun with something that seemed expensive. Meanwhile, Alpinia was trying to say that she also wanted to see what was going on. However, since she didn't know how to walk in heels, she ended up tripping, pushing our boy forward. At the same time, Renee was in front of the shopkeeper, ordering him to reveal who had done this. And right at that moment, our boy stumbled out of the dressing room. The shopkeeper immediately became convinced that it was his fault. Chess knew there was no way they were getting out of this one. Akatingu instantly grabbed Izzo by the tie, lifted him, and asked if he was the one who had done this. Our boy pulled something from his sleeve and without hesitation admitted that yes, it was him. She was surprised by his response, while Chess couldn't understand why he had confessed so easily. Even the shopkeeper was confused, muttering that there was no way to save this lunatic now. Akatingu said she didn't like the way he was looking at her and was about to gouge his eye out. But then, Renee ordered her to stop. She announced that she actually liked that dress. The shopkeeper and the big rat were both startled, wondering if this girl was insane. Akatingu protested, saying that the boy had destroyed her dress, so he needed to lose a finger. But Renee simply asked if she needed to repeat herself. At that, Akatingu immediately obeyed. She released our boy, but slapped him across the face, telling him he better behave. As she straightened his tie, Izzo was already thinking to himself how cool it would be when the headlines tomorrow announced that this woman had been kidnapped. He just couldn't decide whether to use the dragon grenade or the torment grenade. But suddenly, Renee smiled and said that she knew exactly who he was and what he was trying to do. The moment she had stepped into this store, she had felt an overwhelming sense of danger. Izzo was confused and surprised. Chess wondered if his presence had really been detected that quickly. Renee took a slow step forward, never leaving the carpet, and stopped in front of him. She then stated that she knew he was just a mere intern at this store. After hearing she was going to visit, he had altered the dress and staged this whole little act just to get her attention. She was certain that all of this was because he wanted to be part of the Korea family. Izzo was completely lost. He had no idea what this crazy girl was talking about. But Renee kept going, saying that she admired his courage for risking his life just to get her attention. That was why, if he got down on his knees and kissed her foot, she would accept him as her servant. Akatingu was furious. Well, actually, she wasn't furious. She was envious of the opportunity the boy had just received. Meanwhile, smiling, Renee was thinking to herself that when he bent down, if he seemed too eager, she didn't know whether to step on his head or kick him. But Izzo covered his nose and declared that he would never kiss a filthy foot. Both Chess and the shopkeeper were stunned. Akatingu wasn't sure if she should tear his head off. Meanwhile, the protagonist scoffed, saying it was ridiculous for someone from such a rich family to not even have shoes to walk around in. There was no way in hell he was going to kiss something that dirty. Chess was panicking, terrified that this lunatic wouldn't stop adding fuel to the fire. Renee held herself back, but then suddenly, she started crying. She whined that she put perfume on her feet every day, so they weren't smelly. She lifted her hand to slap him, and Izzo already had his plan ready. The moment her hand made contact, he would pull the grenade from his pocket, toss it into the room, and the kidnapping would begin. But before that could happen, someone emerged from behind the curtains. Our dear Alpinia had grabbed Renee's wrist. Chess was shocked. He had no idea how this girl had moved so fast. In an instant, a slash came flying, stopping right beside Alpinia. It was Akatingu, ordering her to take her filthy hand off the lady. Izzo realized that now things were really about to get complicated. Disaster just stood there silent while Renee seemed to be admiring her. She told Akatingu to put away her weapon. Akatingu asked why. Renee explained that she was certain the girl wasn't attacking her. She was protecting the boy. Izzo was impressed by how composed she was. Then Renee stated that she really liked that girl and wanted to take her. Akatingu didn't remember her boss having such preferences and wondered what kind of books she had been reading. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper had no idea what was going on today. But Renee was getting annoyed. She was thinking that these two were being incredibly arrogant. Meanwhile, Disaster stood there, still completely clueless about what was happening. Then the girl said that judging by the blonde's outfit, she clearly belonged to nobility. But even so, when Renee set her eyes on something, she never gave up. So she simply asked for a price. Of course, Alpinia was still completely confused. That was when Izzo spoke up, saying that she was the one who should be naming the price. Renee asked what he meant by that, and at that moment, he reached into his pocket. He then declared that from this moment on, she had been kidnapped by the #1 villain of the Golden City. Akatingu tried to draw her blade, but it was too late. The purple poison was already on the floor. The swordswoman and the servant lost all their strength in an instant. And in the blink of an eye, the girl had disappeared. Now tied to a chair, Izzo smirked and asked, "Where's the like on this?" And you guys remember how the last chapter ended right in the middle of that fight at the clothing store. The protagonist suddenly warned everyone that the clueless girl was being kidnapped from that moment on. He threw his mask on. Akatengu rushed forward, telling the lady to take a step back, but he tossed some poison onto the floor and everyone dropped to their knees. Shinku tried to get up, but he didn't have any strength left, and in just a second, everyone inside the store vanished. Under the moonlight, Renai was now unconscious, being carried away by Cheese, who asked if he had any idea that from now on, the countdown to their deaths had begun. This kidnapping was absolute madness, but carrying the gorgeous Alpenia, he said it was all fine. The gas he made distorts people's memories, so her guards are probably struggling right now to even remember what they did. Back at the store, Shinku's asking where that white-haired kid went. Akatengu tells him to wake up. It was some chubby guy with freckles on his face. Clearly, neither of them has a clue who it really was. Meanwhile, back with the group, Renee's waking up tied to a chair with a gag in her mouth. He tells her, "Welcome to the most dangerous base in this city, the old house of the legendary Perserid family." Strangely, Alpenia pops up behind him laughing like a villain. Our protagonist tells her to hide again, that she's not supposed to show up without permission. Meanwhile, Renai uses her tongue to lower the gag and says it's funny how they call themselves villains when they don't even know how to properly gag someone. She says that the damn girl just woke up and she's already trying to roast them. Aizo explains that he only tied her hands and feet, not the gag, so that's on Cheese. Then both of them get startled when they see she's completely free. The protagonist turns to Cheese and scolds him, saying, "You idiot, don't you even know how to tie a knot?" Suddenly, they realize she's gone from the chair. The damn girl had already grabbed a bag of chips and was calmly eating at the table, while Alpenia was about to steal all the snacks. Out of nowhere, Aizo points a gun at her head and tells her she better understand that in this place she's a hostage. If she doesn't obey, she'll experience the terror of his alchemy. But Renai says there's nothing in alchemy scarier than the punishments of the Kuroya family. He tells her to name one. So she explains that they dig a grave, trap you down there, and start laying metal plates on top. At first, you don't feel anything, but as they pile up, you start to feel your body getting crushed. Damn, that's brutal. Another of their tortures was the Hat of Agony, where they'd put an extremely hot steel helmet on your head. My God, that family's vicious too, and it just keeps getting worse. She says one of the most terrifying ones is the nest of 12 centipedes, where they dig 12 holes and let a centipede crawl into each one, laying eggs inside you. Holy hell, that's horrifying. Cheese then nervously asks if, hypothetically, he let her go right now, that wouldn't happen to them, right? But of course, Aizo refuses to release her, asking if he's lost his mind. The rat-faced guy insists that's why he said, hypothetically. Those traps don't sound too fun. Renai then says none of those punishments would be used on them, and he relaxes until she adds that's only because those were the mild ones. Kidnapping someone like her would lead to something much, much worse. Naturally, the rat is falling apart at this point, but she says they can relax. She'll make sure her family doesn't punish them. Not only that, she won't even say she was kidnapped, and she'll give them a ridiculous amount of money, as long as they agree to one condition. Why the hell is this woman trying to negotiate with them? Still, the rat is trembling but interested. She says the condition is that she wants to join their group. The two are confused, and she explains that living with her family is boring, so she wants to join them to commit some crimes and have fun. On top of that, she's curious about whoever created weapons strong enough to incapacitate Shinku and Akatengo. Considering their potential, she wants to be their sponsor. She's just shocked, realizing she has the highest ranked card in the city. The protagonist, though, knows she must have more conditions up her sleeve. And here comes this weirdo again. Yeah, I knew it. Get out of here, freak. She stands up, holds her card in his face, and says he'll have to obey every single thing she says. Aizo obviously refuses, but Cheese suddenly pushes him aside, shouting that they're absolutely accepting this deal. They need the money, and besides, Aizo is going to obey. Today's a great day. The protagonist tells him to shut up, like hell he'd ever agree to that. But Cheese yells, "You idiot, are you not paying attention? We desperately need cash to create the most terrifying weapon." The protagonist straightens his clothes and says, "I, as the head of the Perserid family, refuse. Our family doesn't accept charity, assistance, or orders from anyone." Then he commands, "Give her a dose of the dragon spider's poison and tie her up again. If nothing happens in 24 hours, we'll demand payment from the Kuroya family." But Renai says it's useless. You won't get a single coin from this kind of kidnapping, because the Kuroya family's honor is worth more than any person. The moment she's kidnapped, basically she's taken out of the family. They don't negotiate with kidnappers. They always hunt them down and use the bodies to show the family's authority. She's just thinking that's kind of extreme, right? A little heartless, isn't it? Renai then says, "Okay, I changed my mind. I'll give you the money, and you just have to help me with one thing. I want you to kill the current head of the Kuroya family named Inju." He asks if that's right, and she interrupts to say yes, it's exactly her father. If he really is the biggest villain in Golden City, he shouldn't be afraid of that. The scene shifts to them cracking lobsters and getting ready for a big banquet. Cheese says he thought the boy would refuse the girl. What happened? Aizo answers that she's asking him to kill her father, not his own, so he has no reason to refuse. Cheese tells the kid to stop, since he doesn't even know who his own father is. Aizo replies that his mother once said that when he took control of the Perserid family and dominated all of Golden City, he'd find out. Cheese laughs, saying their mistress always likes to keep secrets. Still, he's really impressed with Rene's generosity. She gave 20 million coins. That's the equivalent of robbing 10 banks. Meanwhile, somewhere else, armor lies on the floor along with what looks like Shinku's clothes, the big hat included. They're hurting Akakingu. Don't you dare hurt my round demoness. She's good for the story. Poor Shinku's there too, but if that guy wants him dead, fine. Someone's holding a chalice with fish and some worms, and he warns that spindle leeches pass through human orifices much more easily than centipedes. Maybe it's time to upgrade that kind of punishment. He stands and says those who can't protect their masters truly deserve that fate, and she'll be the perfect test. No way you do that to my demoness Akakingu. She's all upset, saying she'll rescue the lady. The guy replies she doesn't even know what the kidnappers look like. How does she dare talk about rescue? Akakingu screams that they'll pay with a ritual blade to the heart. Then suddenly, Rene appears and tells her father, stop that because she's fine. Strangely, he drops his cup, goes over happily and hugs her, saying he's so glad Nana is okay. Thank God. That father seems weirdly good. There's gotta be something off about him. Outside, the artist uses all his skill to pose while she looks at the moonlight. Akatingu, gorgeous and huge, comes over to thank them for saving her. Suddenly, Rene ignores her, pulls out a snack, starts eating, and offers a bit, saying it's delicious. Akatingu takes one look and says junk food is banned in this house. Where did that even come from? Rene just warns that if she ordered them to eat, she should obey without asking questions. Good grief, the artist is a machine, and she proves it by saying it really is amazing. But she wants to know how Rene escaped the kidnappers. Rene simply answers that it's a secret. Back with Cheese, he's burping and saying he never imagined the Kuroya family trained people from age 5. It's insane. Aizo says he's more freaked out that she had 26 blades and 13 needles hidden in her clothes. At any moment while she was in there, they were at risk of death. They got lucky she didn't try anything. Cheese tells the kid to wake up to reality. She's not going to kill the guy she wants to be her sugar mummy. Aizo, however, says he's not eager to be anyone's pet. His cooperation with her is limited to taking down the Kuroya family, and he doesn't want any more involvement with that weird girl. But Cheese tells him to think about it. If they actually manage to pull this plan off and she ends up at the top of the family, they'll never have to worry about money again. Plus, he already got his revenge on her before leaving. Oh, for crying out loud, he's using a little fluffy stick to tickle her foot. I'm already scared of where this is going. She's suffering, telling him to stop. Meanwhile, the protagonist explains that the item he's using is actually custom-made. He can increase the strength of how much it tickles. He used a special kind of insect, and the sensation it caused was exponentially amplified. Anywhere that thing touches becomes unbearable. Good grief. Let's go back to her place already. She's sitting on her bed now, saying Iso's disgusting. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a police officer wants to know what's this about losing 800,000. Oh, right. It's that guy from the clothing store who says yes, that's the total amount since the clothes were exclusive. The officer says he understands, but the description doesn't match the Kuroya family's report. Their people said it was a chubby guy with freckles and a giant rabbit. The shopkeeper says he doesn't know why the Kuroya family would lie, but he's sure. It was a kid with black hair, a bang covering one eye, and a weird rat that looked half human. The officer apologizes, saying he unfortunately can't accept that kind of testimony. Then, a new character enters the story. A tall woman pushes the poor guy against the wall, demanding to know where the boy who lost 800,000 that night is. The cop steps out from behind the door, asking who she is when she throws a badge in his face. On it, her name reads Babapolia, and she declares that she's the new chief around here. Good lord, someone tell me what's written on that little top she's wearing. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. Chat says it means security, but I'd say it doesn't look all that secure. The guys don't seem to believe she's really the new chief. She asks if it's because of her looks and warns them to get used to it. She's a high-ranked slacker who'll be kicking her feet up on the desk whenever she wants. One of the guys starts yelling, wanting to know what the hell's going on. She says he must be one of those subordinates who needs a little bribe to behave. Oh, no way this girl's really a cop. Lock her up right now. But she says the bribe is letting him touch wherever he wants, that he'll have to obey her obediently like a dog. The poor officer can't resist. The guy wants to keep his job, though, so he closes the door and hides outside, muttering that this is completely ridiculous. Who thought putting that punk girl in this position was a good idea? Then a bull-headed guy named Torun, the captain of the team, asks if he's greeted the new boss yet. The subordinate says, "Boss, you've got to be joking, right? That girl's the new one? You've lost your mind." But the bull just answers that minotaurs don't joke. Even though the guy wants nothing to do with it, the other workers are already talking. One says you got a delicious lollipop. Another asks if he can serve her water all day, and the last one wonders why his job suddenly feels so rewarding. The guy realizes they're all interested for the wrong reasons. He warns them not to underestimate the new chief. Now that I look closer, he actually looks kinda cute in this scene. Anyway, this girl is supposed to help deal with the mysterious gang that's been robbing banks. That Babapolia girl was sent straight from headquarters, so she must be powerful. He says he's already checked the files, and one of the guys immediately asks what he found. He leans in and says there's absolutely nothing about her in the records, meaning she's some kind of special agent. Suddenly, she shows up and asks who they're talking about. Out of nowhere, everyone jumps in surprise and nearly falls over. Whoa, what's going on here? Everyone immediately straightens up. Even Torin looks shocked, asking what the orders are. Damn, the artist really went all out on this one. She tells them to relax. She's not one of those old bureaucrats who abuse their power. The 6 most important things to her are fun, passion, and working in unconventional ways. One guy mutters, "Oh, warrior, that's only 3. Suddenly, Babapolia points at him and says, "All right then." He seems pretty bold for calling her out like that. She walks over and hugs him, saying he deserves a gift. The poor guy looks like he's expecting a kiss, but instead she slaps a little frog sticker on him and says this one's special. Then she announces that the recent bank robberies, the kidnapping of the Kuroya family girl, and the dress shop incident are all going to be investigated together. Oh damn, and whoever gathers enough evidence for any of these 3 cases gets to go on a date with her. Torin tells everyone to behave, but then charges out headfirst, horns and all. The guy on the left shouts, "Whoa, Chief Torin, I thought you didn't like those skinny girls." Skinny? Oh, for heaven's sake, I don't even want to see what kind of world he's living in. Still, he wants to know why Torin's running with so much energy. Torin tells him to be quiet. He's just motivated to solve the case and make the city safer. Sure, buddy, sure. Meanwhile, Babapoli is sitting there calmly, staring at her laptop and saying she's going to catch him, the kid who loves defying the city's rules. Turns out she's got a photo of our protagonist carrying Alpinia. She's the one who caught that image on the day they caused chaos at the statue. Then the scene shifts to a grand theater in Lighthouse City. At the entrance, 2 men are chatting. One says it looks like someone named Male is going to make an appearance. The other says that's incredible. If he's talking about that Male from the feudal empire, then those people are amazing. The most impressive of all is their assassin group, the Hellhounds. His friend nods, saying those bastards had the guts to invade the Golden District and assassinate the nobles. In the middle of their conversation, a flash of golden hair passes by. It's the protagonist arriving with Alpinia. Nothing suspicious here, right? A kid barely over 4 feet tall walking beside a towering woman in a golden dress. She tells him to snap out of it, warning that he can't just stare at her like that for free. The fools immediately apologize, realizing they stared too much. The guy on the left asks, "Hey, didn't you even check if her ticket was valid?" His friend replies that her aura was just too strong. She's definitely a noble lady. The protagonist praises her, saying she's amazing, while the weird girl starts trying to lick his face again. Cheese, meanwhile, says he's tired of this servant life. The protagonist hands a lollipop to Alpinia and tells her they'll need to memorize every detail of the place. That's because next Friday, Inju, Rene's father, will be there along with several nobles. The plays showing tonight are The Ice Mermaid Isn't Cold, Little Sister's Holiday, and The Golden Ship. Alpinia is quietly observing everything while the protagonist scans the area. They reach the door to the main hall, and as they walk in, Alpinia suddenly glances to the side, and there he is, the dramatic genius Male. Her eyes widen as she remembers that's the father who abandoned her. Damn, the guy actually became famous. 2 hours later, the rat's walking ahead, telling Iso not to worry. He memorized the location of every trash can. But the protagonist wants to know where Alpinia is, and that's when they realize she's gone. Then it cuts back 2 hours earlier, right when she saw that painting. Her hand started trembling in shock. She touched it, and suddenly someone asked if she was a fan. Turns out, it was the man himself standing right there saying he'd always heard that Golden City was the center of the world. And now that he's there, he realized she really is way more magical and wonderful than he imagined. He says he wants to ask the beautiful lady her name. Alpinia, though, is all hesitant and starts to open her mouth to say something when suddenly another little girl runs up and hugs the guy, calling him Daddy. The mother shows up telling Male there are people around and he should show more respect to her father. They're all commenting how pretty the young girl is, and then poof, she disappears in the middle of the hall. Outside, the sky is turning dark, lightning flashing and rain starting. 2 guards say it's weird. There wasn't any forecast for rain today. Suddenly, Alpinia storms past. They call to her, but she ignores them. In another part of the city, in that famous honest worker district, an Aleph is earning her daily bread. There's another nasty one selling drugs to a poor beggar, even though her abdomen's ripped open. What the hell? And another one's violent, sewing up a bodysuit with a gun on her back. This city is seriously dangerous. Alpinia brushes past and bumps into an old man who tells her to watch who she touches. The drug seller notices her, and the honest worker says a socialite like her shouldn't be on these streets. Alpinia walks into an alley, kneels, and starts crying, wondering who she really is. She trembles in the alley when another girl shows up. The artist must have been inspired by the design and asks if the young soul has lost her way. She's so marvelous she should join the Thousand Birds group, but members can't keep personal items, so she'd have to hand that outfit over to the organization. Whoa! Trying to steal Alpinia's clothes, even sticking a big hand on her and threatening her. Alpinia says she won't hand it over because her master gave it to her. Jesus, this bitch might be hot, but she deserves to die already. She slaps gentle Alpinia across the face and asks if she really won't take it off. The pale blonde, bent over and trembling, says she won't. The bitch then pulls feathers from her hair and tells her she has no idea what she's messing with. She launches a feather attack sequence, slicing through the airbag, cutting the face, the arm, everything. Meanwhile, Cheese is scouring the city. Iso tells him to find her quickly. Just go, he orders. They arrive at an alley and Cheese says she must be there. Iso tells him to move forward. What's he waiting for? The rat explains that up ahead is the Black Star District, a chaotic place that can look glamorous on the outside but where you can easily get lost and where innumerable dangerous powers lurk. Iso says, that rat doesn't respect me. Do you think I'm afraid of a bunch of low-level thugs? But Cheese says, Iso, you don't get it. This is the Thousand Birds base. Even the city patrol doesn't know how to deal with these people. The scene changes to a warehouse where they're saying the outfit is gorgeous, the boss went all out, and they should at least interrogate the girl. Alpenia is lying there, completely wrecked on the floor. The boss says this new sister doesn't understand the rules. She needs training. The girl with the pipe says she really has the look of a broken heart. The one with the ripped abdomen calls for the brothers and says they're the most disgusting men. My God, what do you plan to do, my girl? No, they're already saying they want you dead. And the guys agree, saying yes, they're nothing but trash. I'm afraid of what they'll ask them to do. Meanwhile, the boss tells Raven to use the soul search and find out who this girl is. She Needles puts her hand over Alpenia's face and sees some images of Iso slaps, right? Him taking care of her, checking her fever, so to speak, but she also sees Alpenia talking with her father. She being taken into the alley, locked in a cage, that beefy hellhound tossing bread at her like she's trash. A beggar fight breaks out, punches to the face, rocks to the head, geez. The guy comes back and then, right then Raven wakes up, asking if this girl really is who they think she is. The scene cuts to Iso with a giant insect stuck to the other guy's head, forcing him to reveal where the woman in the golden dress was taken. He warns the man to look to the side and see what happens to people who don't give the information he wants. When the man looks, his friend's brain is being sucked out by another insect. Cheese is freaked out, thinking, Christ, Iso's blood-sucking mosquitoes are one of his cruelest inventions. He's really not happy to see them used now. And the man says it was the boss, the Golden Phoenix, who took her to that warehouse. It seems the women plan to train her in some way. Iso orders the man to show exactly where that warehouse is. The scene switches to the place. They open the door, and of course, everyone's destroyed, bodies on the floor. Iso approaches the first body and sees a quick, precise cut to the neck on each of them. The rat-like guy observes and says it's the same for everyone here. The protagonist finds it weird. If Alpenia had gone berserk, she would wipe them all out. So why do the wounds look like they came from a blade? Then we see what appears to be the boss in the corner, also slashed up and begging for help. When they check, it's the organization's leader wearing transparent clothes. Cheese immediately recognizes the tattoo the man mentioned and says that this is supposedly the boss. The rat's thinking that the back mountains feel strangely soft, but that rat needs to go to jail too. The protagonist tells them to focus and start the interrogation before she dies. To keep her alive, they inject a recovery fluid into her spine. 3 minutes later, the girl's back, trembling all over, saying she couldn't see the blade. Iso orders her to open her mouth and say, "Where's that woman in the golden dress?" But the girl's terrified, shaking, insisting she has no idea. We cut back an hour earlier to when Raven was probing her memories. Wow, Alpenia just grabbed an arm and it broke instantly. The three are shocked, and suddenly she starts transforming, her hair turning purple. She stares down, grabs the other girl by the arm, and they're sure those girls were being punished. 3 feathers fly at them, but Alpenia catches 2 on her fingers and 1 in her mouth. The boss notices that somehow she's reacting extremely fast now. The muscle woman warns that this is their territory and that she better let Raven go or she won't leave here alive. That's when Raven reveals Alpenia might be tied to the Hellhounds. Also, she's the infiltrator in the Golden District who's been killing the nobles. Immediately, the blonde panics and the boss falls to the ground. They tell Alpenia to release Raven and say what price she wants. The big woman calls them crazy, telling the boss that this woman isn't that strong. They outnumber her. The boss ignores that and tells her to shut up. Then she tells Alpenia they'll keep her secret without any problem. They don't care about the city's nobles, they'd rather see them dead. Suddenly, Alpenia tells her to put on that invisible outfit, if you know what I mean. The girl's confused. Why would she ask that? The muscle one says it can't be. The Chidori group, the Thousand Birds, can't be humiliated like this. Raven just tells the damn girl to shut up and warns that if the boss doesn't surrender, everyone there will die. The blonde laughs, saying Falcon's just mad because she's the smallest in the group and might have to do it too. While Falcon yells at her to shut up, she can't even roll over on the bed because of the overwhelming power she has. The boss, however, tells both of them to stop fighting and to go find her some clothes instead, but Raven says something feels off. Theoretically, the Hellhounds never leave anyone alive. That's when the masked man appears, saying she's right. No one there should still be alive. The girls look up, and here comes the villain. In an instant, he's already on the floor, slicing the first one's neck clean. She grabs at it, but collapses instantly. She manages to tell the boss to run, but before that, the other friend's already down too. Raven's dead, and the boss breaks down crying in despair. The man says it's pathetic that one of the city's most prominent gangs could be this useless. Back with Cheese, he's confused, saying that if the Hellhounds are so strong, why did Alpenia get beaten up by that old man when they first found her? Iso, though, is more concerned about her hair turning purple. That shouldn't have happened. With the cocoon of despair, the Silver Phoenix grabs his clothes, begging him to save Raven and everyone else. From now on, Chidori belongs to him. The rat looks intrigued, of course, that creep's always got an angle. He examines the honest worker's pupils and says there's no response. Normal treatment won't work. The only way would be to use that technology. But Iso grabs the rat and tells him to stop fooling around. They need to recover Alpinia as fast as possible. She's part of the most important experiment so far. The rat says to wait, that he can at least apply the preservation agent to this woman. Iso snaps back. Didn't you say saving others was pointless? She admits, yeah, I said that. And I'm also a hypocrite. So he tosses something that lands in the Phoenix's hand, telling her to inject it to stop her skin and body from decomposing beyond recovery. The scene shifts to a bridge in the city. On top of it stands Alpinia, completely unhinged. She's clearly got problems. She touches her face, realizing she's got her left arm, her right eye, and her heart. This body of hers must have been saved somehow. But whose memories are these, and why did all of this happen to her? She doesn't remember any of it. The real owner of the body has taken control again. Then that guy from the Hellhounds organization appears behind her, calling out to Yorkshire. For God's sake, these dog names are terrible. She turns and calls him Doberman. They just stare at each other. It's like the story's pausing for a dramatic still shot. Then Doberman says she'd better hand over all the information she's absorbed. Why did the assassination of the Black Palace leader fail? And why did she disappear for so long? Yorkshire, yeah, guess I'll have to call each personality by a different name. Explains that she successfully infiltrated the palace, but strangely realized she'd been poisoned. A strange priest and a swordsman fought her, and she lost an arm, a leg, and an eye. Doberman says it must have been the swordsman named Dawndusk, one of the strongest men alive, known as the Living Law. He was a licensed hero ranked number 5. No wonder she lost to him. What he wants to know now is, if she lost all that, why is she standing in front of him completely intact? Yorkshire says she has no idea. It seems someone was watching over her while she was unconscious all that time. The guy says it doesn't matter. Now that she's breathing, her sight's back. She says she understands, but Iso appears and says he won't allow that because from now on, forever, he's her master. The two look to the side, confused, and see the boy standing there, farming aura at his 4-foot height. Doberman asks who the kid is, and she says he's the one who saved her. Doberman answers that even the repair to her vocal cords shows the boy treated her well. That's good. She's not planning to betray her master for him. She lowers her head and says she would never do something like that, but in the next moment he orders her to kill him. He warns that once he's dead, they'll have more important things to handle. Yorkshire says she understands, gets up and walks toward Iso. Face to face, she gives him a stare and says he really shouldn't have followed her. The kid's bold. He takes off his mask and says, the moment you joined the Perserid family, you became my property. If you don't come home now like a good little girl, I'll beat you. She freezes, PTSD hitting hard, the trauma floods back, and she lashes out, telling him to shut up. But someone grabs her hand. Look who's back, Lucille herself, the demoness, furious and saying now's the time to settle things with the brat. Iso just tells her to use the Black Plague on the girl already, because if she goes berserk, he won't save her this time. Lucille tells the kid to relax. Of all the viruses in existence, the Black Plague is the easiest to assimilate. Seeing Iso step away, she asks if he can really take her home and spend the night with her. He says yes, but if she fails, she'll be in prison for real. Then Iso steps in front of Doberman and says there's only one way to decide who owns experiment number 1. He'll have to wipe out the entire Hellhound group. Doberman's posture screams Aura Farmer, saying anyone who comes within 5 meters of me never walks away alive. You're one step from that distance. Yorkshire tries to say something, but the guy slashes Iso. Oof, it lands. Iso falls to his knees, wondering if that's the Hellhound's power. Doberman turns and says Iso's all bark and no bite. Suddenly, a feather flies inches from his face. Yorkshire attacked him. Doberman grabs her arm and says she'll have to wait a long time, or it'll be considered betrayal. He also asks why she was crying. At that moment, Lucille panics because she was holding Alpinia's arm, and the arm's gone, lying on the ground. She's in shock, saying it's impossible. She didn't feel anything. Alpinia tells the bastard she already warned them. You can see a glowing pentagram inside her eye. Doberman asks if she'll really do this to save the kid who rescued her. She should know the Hellhounds don't care about anyone. Iso, meanwhile, is on the ground laughing himself sick. Doberman, confused, asks why the boy is still alive. The protagonist stands up and apologizes, explaining that she was already infected with cell proliferation. He says he only let that slash hit her neck to test whether she still remembered him beneath the Hellhound personality. He straightens his jacket and says someone from the Perserid family wouldn't die from such a stupid method. Then he tells her to go back to her master. Instead, she slams her knee into his stomach. Doberman's stunned. This girl's beating everyone. Lucille yells at the bastard to stay right where she is or she'll kill her right now. Yorkshire says she's not that blonde girl anymore. If they keep pushing her, she won't be able to hold back. Damn, that's dangerous. But Iso, smiling, says he disagrees. For example, he's got this little teddy bear here. He knows it means the world to her. And instead of being used as a killing machine in the Hellhounds, she should join him and change this world through alchemy. He wants to build a place where you can keep the people you love by your side. Doberman says it's a shame because even if that place ever comes to exist, he won't be alive to see it. He starts muttering weakness, hesitation, doubt, emotions, while a whole squad of hellhounds shows up on the bridge. He says no one there deserves to be part of the hellhounds and orders them to kill everyone. The group charges forward, but Iso just laughs, saying they really think they can win with numbers in this day and age. He pulls out a pistol, grinning like a madman, and says it's time to clean up this place. A strange capsule shoots up into the sky, shattering above the bridge and releasing a burst of purple sparks, and suddenly a dragon appears above them. The next chapter flashes back to a time before they even knew about Alpinia's new personality. Iso tells the rat to stay still. Something's bothering him. She knows what he means. Iso brings up her turning her hair purple, which theoretically was her original form. What would happen if the body's original consciousness took over Alpinia completely? She'd have control of the emerald gold, the angel arm, and that would be a nightmare to handle. On top of that, she might start dealing with the hellhounds, restoring countless memories, which would also be dangerous. Cheese covers his mouth and says, "Hey, stop jinxing it. That's dangerous. But what are we supposed to do then?" The protagonist answers that in that case, they'll have to release Lucille. The only way to stop a high-rank creature is with another one. We cut to the base. Lucille's there, wearing that invisible outfit. The rat warns him to be careful. She's extremely dangerous. If she goes berserk, everyone could die. Plus, she's in a coma. But Iso says she's faking it. She actually woke up the day after she passed out. That's because she has a DNA memory technique. If even a single one of her cells survives inside someone like a virus, she can awaken and instantly reclaim her body. Basically, Lucille can't die as long as one infected person exists somewhere in the world. And on top of that, she can rapidly regenerate and rebuild her entire body. He tells the nerd to praise the genius who created this perfect experiment. The rat replies that he doesn't look so genius when he needs to use charms to keep that girl under control. Iso tells him to shut up. Then the protagonist grabs the mic and tells Lucille to stop pretending. If she keeps lying there, she'll lose her only chance to stretch those legs. The slay woman just smiles. Then she stands up, taps the glass, and asks if little Iso's coming too. The scene switches to a candy-colored trailer in the middle of the city. Someone says this place is way too cozy. It's Babapolia herself, relaxing and eating donuts. The chief beside her complains that her donut truck's overloaded with a billion accessories and drawing too much attention. She tells him to shut up. It's customized to fit her style. Besides, it's disguised as a donut truck but has plenty of other functions. She says this is her office and shuts him up by stuffing a donut in his mouth. Then suddenly, an alert pops up, an emergency on the bridge. Apparently, a dragon has appeared. Babapolia smiles and says, finally she gets to help keep the city safe. Out of nowhere, the trailer starts flooring it and speeds off, while the rest of the base is left confused. They'd gone out to buy donuts and got left behind. The scene cuts to another place, the White Queen's residence. That guy who sells manhwa is still frozen on the throne. Someone in clogs walks by, but a masked guard warns them the president is resting and not to disturb her. A girl named Cryowei, who looks like one of the White Queen's heroines, says a dragon showed up and things are getting crazy. The masked guard replies that the city escort will try to handle it first. If they fail, then the president will step in. Cryowei says the dragon looks a lot like the black-winged dragon that destroyed his city 10 years ago. The masked guard grabs her hand and repeats, the president is resting and nobody interrupts her. The strange girl is clinging to the ice statue. Meanwhile, on the bridge, the dragon stares down. Everyone and people are trembling and scattering. The beast lunges and snaps up 4 or 5 people in midair. At the name Persered, Doberman remembers a group of alchemists from 100 years ago. Suddenly, some purple dragons approach him. Lucille appears and says he thinks he has time to worry about subordinates, but she's more curious whether he preferred to die of malaria, fever, Ebola, or what. Since he's a hellhound and basically a dog, dying of rabies might suit him best. Back there, Iso gives the teddy bear back to Yorkshire and tells her to accept that now she's part of the Perserid family, or she can take this dagger and go back to being controlled by the hellhounds. The choice is hers, he won't interfere. She hesitates a second, raises her hand above the teddy, and just like he hoped, she's about to make the right choice. But suddenly she twists her wrist and seems to grab the dagger. Then she turns and says, hold this teddy for now. I've got other things to deal with. In the fight, Lucille pressures the hellhound who keeps fleeing and demands to know where the big leader is. The protagonist tells her to stop tailing Doberman. He's trying to lure her away so he can assassinate him later. She should stay close now. At that moment, a bunch of hellhounds sneak up behind him, but Lucille's dark dragon rips through them and the protagonist reminds her she must protect him. She says she understands and vows not to let any of that trash lay a finger on her boy. Iso tells her to stop moving away from him, and she steps in close, saying she got it. The poor kid's going to be at 0 distance now. Meanwhile, Alpinia approaches Doberman, who asks if she's finally ready to face him. He reminds her he taught her every technique she knows, and if she hadn't joined the Hellhounds, she would have been tortured and killed by her stepmother. Then Alpinia stabs her own hand. Iso is confused, and Doberman looks a little scared. She says, eye, throat, arm, hand, stomach, 12 places. Basically, to get out of the Hellhounds, you must take a strike at each of those points, and if you survive, you're free. She orders Doberman to do it. He asks if she's lost her mind doing all this for that kid. She should remember that no one ever survived the 13 Fangs attack. Wait, wasn't it 12? Now it's increasing. Dirty trick. Iso shouts from a distance that Alpina shouldn't harm herself. Her body belongs to him, so she has no right. She just turns and says this is her business. If he tries to get involved, the only thing he'll get is a corpse. The poor protagonist standing there with his noise-canceling headset on, saying she's truly impossible to control. Meanwhile, Lucille's finishing off her opponent and asks for permission to go stop that girl. She says it would be easy. Doberman, however, removes his mask and says she's nothing like her mother. That woman wouldn't waste time asking others to save her. She'd have already gone straight for his throat. Yorkshire asks if he really knows who her mother is. He says there's no reason to hide it. Her mother was the strongest hellhound hunter and also his teacher. It was a shame she fell into the hands of some second-rate actor. She tried escaping once but was stopped, and her master brought her down. Still, she kept trying again and again. In the end, the master gave the order, and Doberman himself had to deal with her personally. Before she died, she begged him to let her finish sewing that teddy bear. Why is he telling her all this? Obviously, Yorkshire's losing it, shouting that she swears she'll kill him. He smirks, saying now she finally looks ready. He had no interest in keeping around trash like her, wagging her tail for someone else. Then their fight finally begins, both charging at each other. Explosions, flashes, blades clashing everywhere. They cross paths in a blur. Yorkshire ends up with a gash on her face, and Doberman says her emotions have made her weak. But then he realizes his heart's been sliced. He falls to his knees, asking if she really learned the technique of the Abyss of the Heartbreaker. What a name. She replies that he once said the first person to master it would be the one to kill him. He looks down and mutters that now he understands what destiny means. That was the last technique their master taught him, and ironically, he used it to kill her. Now, as he fades away, he says it's incredible. Even her voice sounds exactly like their master's. Then he drops a key, and Yorkshire catches it midair. Lucille's standing there like me, thinking, wow, that was kinda sad, and way too fast. What a boring fight. Meanwhile, Iso's asking why Yorkshire was running away. Lucille explains the girl realized that now that she's killed Doberman, her life no longer has meaning, and she jumped into the sea. The protagonist goes to check but notices something strange. The bridge is packed with explosives. They're everywhere, and there's an old man holding a detonator, ready to press it. The protagonist tries to activate his suit's anti-gravity system, but the fuel's already empty. And I was just wondering, where the hell is Cheese? Now it makes sense. There's no traffic on the bridge because he's there blocking everyone. He knocked out the guard and, of course, is stopping anyone from interfering with Iso's fight. Then Babapolia shows up in her truck, saying the ice cream's melting and she needs to get through fast. If he lets her pass, she'll let him have a taste, and the way she positions herself makes the rat instantly get what she means. The bastard moves closer, grinning, saying that in that case, he'll have to try it first to see if she really deserves to pass. But Babapolia is already pulling out her shotgun with her other hand. The officer asks what she's doing, and she says she already checked the bridge workers' files, and there's no rodent listed. Considering the recent robberies, this guy might be one of the bank heist suspects. Just as Cheese walks up, all cheerful, big grin on his face, ready to taste the ice cream, the entire bridge explodes. But then we see 2 minutes earlier, the protagonist Dragon unleashing flames everywhere, furious, roaring that he'll tear every last one of those bastards apart. Iso knows that even if he'd had that big armored thing by the cage, he wouldn't have been able to defend against this. Suddenly, he grabs Lucille's arm. That odd girl keeps flushing red all the time. She thinks Iso realized she's actually a stronger, more usable experiment, and now he's even holding her hand. The protagonist just tells her to shut up and jumps too, right as the whole bridge explodes. From a distance, the strange old man watches. If I'm not mistaken, that's the Hellhound's master, right? He says Doberman held on until the last second, but unfortunately, he couldn't kill the woman he loves so much. The elf replies that Doberman practically asked to be killed. The old man says that the moment Doberman met Yorkshire, he became useless. Not to mention that bastard had the nerve to investigate the noble cases he was involved in. They were supposed to inform the Black Palace, locate Yorkshire, and warn about a third strange group interfering in their game. Meanwhile, Cheese calls Iso, asking what happened and why the bridge exploded. The protagonist doesn't answer, and Cheese realizes the kid's done something stupid. He bolts, but Babapolia sees him. Everyone else wants to know what's going on. She stands there calm, saying she almost caught the rat this time. The old head of the association is coughing near death, saying aging is the worst thing in the world and his body can't hold out much longer. He urgently needs that technology. The elf asks if he really believes Golden City holds immortality, and if living forever is that important to him. The old man says an elf who lives thousands of years would never understand. She leans in and tells him not to worry. If he dies, she'll kill herself and go with him. Hey, get out of here, weirdo. The Huntmaster says to the Heron that together they'd become immortal and stay by each other's side forever. Right then, the protagonist appears, asking if the old man is truly after immortality. If that's what he wants, he wouldn't need to beg the nobility. He could hand it over if that's truly his desire. The old man asks who's there, and the protagonist introduces himself, Azo Percival, the most brilliant alchemist of this century. The old man says it's impossible. 200 kilos of high-grade explosives were used. Nobody should have survived that bridge. Izo shows how wrecked his coat is thanks to the junk he prepared, proving they barely made it. We cut to 20 minutes earlier, the moment he jumped with Lucille and the devices started activating. Suddenly, black wings appeared around her, the power rushing toward Izo and wrapping both their bodies into a ball as the massive blast hurled them toward the sea. She's hugging him, calling him a fool. He should run instead of worrying about her, since she's just a black virus. Of everyone in the world, he as the creator should know that best. The Huntmaster asks where the rest of the guards are. Lucille smiles and asks if he means those lovely ones. Apparently they're already in the mouths of her dragons. The old man's confused, asking how both of them survived and what happened. Izo replies that the bombs were way too obvious and whoever detonated them had to be watching everything, so obviously they could only be in that place. The Huntmaster tells him to shut up and get to the point. Izo says he's not asking for much. He's just going to interrogate the old man, torture him until he's close to death, and pull every scrap of information about the Hellhounds out of him. He clearly wants to wipe those guys out. The old man laughs, saying the boy's arrogant and will regret surviving that explosion. His body's about to be sliced into 8,000 pieces in a single second. Suddenly, his hand starts trembling like he's trying to press the low button beneath it. Izo tells him it's a shame, looks like he's lost muscle control, huh? The old man doesn't understand why, and Izo explains that the room's already filled with dragon spider venom. He adds that when he entered the room, he noticed 18 of the floor panels were traps. The old man says something's wrong. Not even Doberman knew exactly which tiles were rigged. Izo says it's simple. The experiment beside him can detect things at a molecular level. She told them that 18 tiles in this area had no trace of sugars or peroxides. Strangely, those 18 tiles formed a path leading straight to the throne. So actually, the safe ones were those 18. The rest were all traps. Then the protagonist tells Lucille he's not sure if there are traps near the old man, so she should handle that for him. She says she'll take care of it right now, and her two wolves charge straight at the old man. I thought someone would stop them, but they just dragged him right through. Farcia calls out to him while the old man begs not to be killed. He reveals that someone called the Dog Keeper is the true power behind the Latoma Continent's empire, and he created the Hellhounds as an illegal way to assassinate anyone he wanted. They infiltrated the system so deeply that even the Emperor follows their orders. The protagonist laughs, saying it's funny how a man who's trained killers for 150 years is now reduced to baiting a kid who hasn't even turned 18. He tells him to start talking, to list all of his dealings and arrangements with the nobles. The old man's stammering, pleading for his life, but it looks like he loses consciousness. Then something injects into his neck, and when he opens his eyes again, he looks young, rejuvenated. Iso shows him a video telling him to be impressed. He's been reverted to his prime. The old man, confused like me, asks if the boy really possesses immortality and why he helped him. Izo explains that it's because his goal is to eliminate every noble in this world and seize control of the Golden City. The old man nods, realizing Iso wants the information he has about the nobility. Then the scene cuts to a girl being tortured. It's hard to even understand what's happening. She's stretched out above a cauldron, and I think they're collecting her sweat into a jar. Dear God, this guy's on a level I can't even comprehend. And the worst part? I think that's Rene's father, Inju. He says he's bored, so terribly bored, because even after all this time, no one dares to kill him. Looks like those women were hellhound assassins. The Huntmaster explains to the protagonist that they made a bet with the nobles. If the hellhounds could injure a noble, they'd earn recognition. The protagonist asks why the nobles would want to be attacked. Were they bored or something? Was the city too peaceful, the heroes too restless? The Huntmaster says exactly. Boredom. That's the word they kept repeating. They said everything had lost meaning. Iso then realizes that everything that happened to Alpinia, now living as Yorkshire, was all because some rich idiot wanted an adrenaline rush. She and all the hellhounds were just pawns on someone's chessboard. Yorkshire, though, is still clutching that key, and we see a conversation she once had with Doberman about a certain investigation. He had warned her that whatever he discovered might cost him his life. The most important thing he owned, he said, was stored in container C-428 down at the East Docks. If he died before finishing his mission, she should go there and check it out. Yorkshire looks confused, but he just tells her it's something important for her too. Back in the present, she's walking through the docks, wondering what's inside that place. But her hair starts to change back to normal. She stops walking and suddenly she's Alpinia again, not even knowing what she's doing there. She crouches down in the middle of the street until someone says she never listens. It's the protagonist, teleporting in, standing right beside her, saying she's always causing trouble. She's startled and he's smiling, telling her to get up and come with him. It's time to go home. Acting all sweet, that shameless guy who's always surrounded by tall, gorgeous women. What a life, huh? I want to be an alchemist too. The blonde kid from Fullmetal Alchemist didn't have this kind of alchemy luck. The scene cuts back to the base right when Iso steps behind the old chief, who's begging for forgiveness, saying Yorkshire is alive and well, so everything's fine. The protagonist says he doesn't even know who Yorkshire is. That's not her name. The chief says yes, she has another one. That's just her code name. The protagonist asks if he still believes she belongs to the Hellhounds. The chief quickly says no way. Now she belongs to the Persered or Percival family. whatever it's called. The protagonist asks what will happen to the organization now. The Huntmaster kneels and says that from now on, everyone serves him. Iso seems intrigued but says the man will have to show some sincerity first. The chief hands him a bunch of keys, saying all their riches are stored in that ship, and he can take them. Iso takes the keys and says he's off to a good start, but it's not enough. The chief agrees, saying he'll collect everything he has hidden in the city of Latoma and have it sent to him. But man, I keep telling you, this kid's a pervert. The only thing Iso wants is what? The man's beautiful woman, of course. This guy's got some kind of woman-stealing gene, a real danger to society. Someone banned him already. The old man's confused, while the protagonist asks if they have a deal or not. The Huntmaster trembles, then smiles, calls for Garcia, and declares that from this moment on, she belongs to Lord Iso, and she must be a good girl and obey him. Damn, Garcia hates his guts instantly. I didn't expect her to be that strong. Well, maybe we kind of knew, but it's always something to see up close. The protagonist lifts her chin and asks if the old man didn't want immortality just to be with her. How can he have the nerve to bargain like this? Suddenly, he attaches the gravity device to her neck and asks if the old man really accepts her becoming one of his experiments. The Huntmaster says the Hellhounds have already submitted to the boy, and even if it breaks his heart, he'll never go against his orders. But deep down, the old man's thinking, one day I'll uncover the secret of immortality and I'll kill every last one of those damned Percivals, along with all the nobles. Iso tells the Huntmaster to take advantage of his new body and reclaim the throne he loves so much. The man climbs the stairs, shaking, while Iso says that as long as he exists, he'll always be the one in control. He tells the great Huntmaster to give his first grand command. Excited, the man begins to declare it, but suddenly his nose starts bleeding. Drops fall into his lap and he looks confused, not understanding what's happening. Blood starts running from his eyes. He asks what Iso did to his body. The protagonist grins and explains that what he actually injected was something called Azathoth-01. In theory, it's a serum that cures all forms of decay and every symptom of aging in any carbon-based organism. The old man asks why his body's reacting so strangely, and Iso calmly explains that Azathoth-01 only works for those of pure Percival blood. The old man demands to know why he'd do something like that. He'd sworn his loyalty. Iso replies that he could never trust someone who would sell out the person they love. That kind of person is far too dangerous. Damn. Humiliated the guy, gave him a lecture, stole everything he owned, took his woman and killed him. That's pure cruelty. For real, I didn't believe him when he said he was the city's most ruthless villain, but now, yeah, I'm starting to. Garcia breaks down crying in his arms. At least I hope that's what's happening. Meanwhile, Shees walks in saying it ended way too quickly. Iso tosses him the key and tells him to join up with Lucille, gather all the loot, and get ready to head home. They're also taking the elf, since she seems to be from some extremely rare emerald blood elven race. The rat says he can handle everything, but asks where the boy's going. Iso answers like it's obvious. He's going to fetch that idiot Alpinia, since the dagger he gave her has a built-in tracker, and he knows she isn't far. An hour later, that's when he found her out in the rain and brought her home. Now we're back at the base. The poor protagonist is suffering from success, gravitational orbs surrounding his head, ready to crush his skull from every direction. Lucille's pulling on him, reminding him that they agreed earlier. Tonight, he's hers. But Alpinia snaps back that too much has happened, and she's the one staying with him tonight. The two start arguing, tutting him back and forth, while Cheese just stands there listening to everything, wondering if he should feel envy or pity for the kid. Jupiter might be the planet with the strongest gravity, but right now it looks like our boy's the one being crushed. We cut back to 3 hours earlier when the argument first broke out. He shoved them apart, telling them to stop annoying him. They better cut it out, because he's the one in charge. If they kept this nonsense up, he turned both of them into unstable cell experiments. Alpinia says fine, while Lucille reminds him that he already promised, so he can't take it back now. Iso remembers he did promise her, and if he doesn't keep his word, his kind of bargaining power would lose its weight. So he sighs and says fine, Lucille can have tonight, and she celebrates like she just won a prize. Then he turns to Alpinia and says since she disobeyed him, she's not sleeping there tonight. She looks ready to cry, but he orders her to stop whining, grab her blanket, and leave. She gives him one last hurt look and walks out, all sad, while Lucille smirks from the corner. He warns her that if she says one more word to taunt Alpinia, she's sleeping on the floor herself. The moment the door closes, the crazy villain makes her move. He tells her to back off, that he needs to use the bathroom. He's thinking about how he's supposed to survive the night when Lucille suddenly appears, calling him cute. The poor guy jumps, falls backward. Good God. I'm not even describing that scene. Image 1 to image 2, she says something about inorganic salts and that he's healthy. Thank heaven. The protagonist grabs a shower head, sprays her down, brushes his teeth, and tells her to get out of there. The lunatic grins, showing her teeth, saying they're clean, and he tells her to open her mouth so he can check if her breath's normal. Obviously, when she does, she gets close again and pounces on him, pinning him down. He warns her that if she tries something like that again, she's getting thrown out into the living room. She says she understands, but her face definitely says otherwise. Honestly, that girl's terrifying. Meanwhile, the protagonist sitting there, mentally telling everything that's happened in this whole insane incident. He's clearly scared to go to bed. That's obvious. But Lucille asks him when he's coming to sleep. It's already midnight, so what's he even writing? He tells her he's almost done, and if she's tired, she can go ahead and sleep first. Lucille looks a bit sad and says that if he hates her that much, he doesn't need to force himself to keep that promise. She stands up, says goodbye, and walks off to sleep outside. She passes by crying, and of course, Aizo falls for it. The fool. He turns and tells her he's almost finished. She can stay if she wants. He turns off the lights, saying it's time to sleep, while that schemer's over there grinning, thinking about how easy it is to fake sadness. Once they're lying down, the protagonist tells her she can hug him if she wants, but that's it. Nothing else. But he notices something strange. She's not moving closer. When he looks over, she's trembling. Lucille starts wondering why, now that she's finally here, she feels so hesitant and scared. She says that during those 1,322 days she was trapped there, every single minute and second she fantasized about holding his hand, hugging him, and sleeping by his side. Those dreams and thoughts were the only reason she managed to survive all that agony. She's crying, saying something's wrong, that her cells feel drawn to him, and she can't resist it. The protagonist apologizes and hugs her, saying he was too cruel. He promises never to lock her up in that place again. Finally, things get all soft and emotional. Thank God. Meanwhile, the rat's watching something weird on TV, some kind of fight, though I can't even tell what it is. Still, he's really into it. Then he nearly jumps out of his seat when Alpenia suddenly appears beside him, looking all gloomy. He asks what's wrong. The fight keeps playing on screen, and the rat's panicking, realizing he should probably change the channel. He quickly switches it to something safer, a Pac-Man movie or whatever, and invites Alpenia to sit next to him and watch. But the second she sits down, he starts panicking again. What do I do now? If she stays here, I can't watch my show. I'm not giving up my perfect TV time because of Aizo. Then he mutters that Aizo's too soft. If he kicked her out of the room, it's probably because she should go back in. Besides, if she gives up on him now, she'll basically be handing him over to Lucille on a silver platter. He reminds her that she's the strongest experiment here, so by right, she's the one who should be at his side. Alpenia quietly agrees. Maybe she really does have that right. The rat realizes chaos is about to unfold, while he, on the other hand, just wants to enjoy his show. He opens Aizo's door and releases a cloud of sleeping gas. Sleep Formula No. 3. Extremely powerful stuff. He fits a mask over Alpenia's face, starts counting down, and at 1, he tells her to have a good night's rest. She thanks him, crawls through the doorway, and he gently closes it, pulls off the mask, and sighs in relief. Now he can finally watch his precious fight in peace. Back in the room, Alpenia slowly crawls closer, spotting Lucille sleeping tightly against the protagonist. The moment she sees it, she rips the mask off, furious at the sight. Lucille, though, just grins, saying she should thank Cheese for releasing that gas. Now the boy Aizo can't do anything. Alpenia lunges, but Lucille blocks, and the fight spills out of the bed. Alpenia yells that eating the master is forbidden, and Lucille fires back that she wasn't eating, she just gave him a tiny lick on the neck. At that moment, though, her hand starts burning, and she remembers the arm of the flame angel that scorched her completely before. There's no way she can win this, not without losing her chance entirely. Lucille warns her that if she uses that heat-based power now, she might hurt Aizo. The power fades, and Lucille smirks, saying they're both high-risk experiments. She admits Alpenia's strong, maybe they could share his love then 50-50, one on the left and one on the right. Alpenia thinks for a moment, but ends up agreeing to the deal. Lucille, smug as ever, thinks to herself that the girl's such an easy fool to manipulate and tells her to lie down. So Lucille lies down first, knowing that for some reason Aizo actually likes this weird girl. If she starts a fight now, she'll only end up losing. Bit by bit, she'll get closer and eventually steal Aizo completely for herself. While Aizo is being crushed by Jupiter, the scene shifts to a massive airship flying over the city, the alchemy amplifier known as the Throne of Percival. Wait, or is this his dream? The protagonist sitting on that throne, controlling the entire city below. Alpenia is there too, dressed in a military uniform, telling him to put on his cloak. He thanks her and says she's finally learning to obey. But when he tries to stand up, he can't move. Something's pressing down on his body. That's when he starts to wake up and realizes what's actually happening. He looks to the side and wonders why Alpenia is there too. And to make things worse, the blanket feels wet. Oh no, don't tell me she wet the bed. The protagonist starts scolding Alpenia while Lucille bursts out laughing. Of course it was her. She must have used some kind of spell on poor Alpenia to make her lose control of her bladder. Obviously her plan was to make sure Aizo would never let Alpenia sleep next to him again. And it works, because Aizo declares that Alpenia is banned from sleeping there from now on. He says he can't risk the fluids of a high-risk experiment contaminating his space and putting his life in danger. Lucille says it's a shame. Now she's the only one who'll get to sleep with him. But he cuts her off immediately, saying both of them are getting their own separate rooms and sleeping alone. Lucille's confused, saying that doesn't make sense. She wasn't the one who made the mess. Aizo replies that she's too heavy and keeps crushing him, so it won't work either. She pouts, saying she's light as a feather, so he shouldn't worry about that. But Aizo turns away and says he knows exactly who caused what happened to Alpenia. Both of them are important experiments and they need to learn to live independently instead of clinging to him all day. Lucille nods, but at the same time wraps herself around his leg, promising that from now on she'll obey. All she wants is to stay close at night. Alpenia says the same thing, and now both of them are crying at his feet. That's when she steps in, saying that's enough. Izo is the head of the Percival family and the president of the Research Association, not some toy for them to fight over. Any experiments that disobey orders and don't stay in their assigned places don't deserve to remain free. Iso thinks to himself that he's glad he's got the rat around to help keep order. Cheese then holds up a chart, a weekly schedule showing who gets to sleep with Izo each day. He says that way, no one has to fight anymore. The protagonist just stares, trying to figure out why this was his solution. Lucille asks why Sunday's blank, and the rat explains that on Sundays they flip a coin, fair and square. Iso immediately pulls out his gun, saying that was an amazing system, and shoots the paper, blasting it apart. He says that's enough. No one's sleeping with him anymore, problem solved. 0 nights. Then he tells Cheese to report on the collection of the Hellhound Association's assets. Cheese says everything's stored in room B21. Izo tells him they'll check it out, but warns the two girls to stay put and not disobey. Lucille wraps her arm around Alpenia, saying that now they're best friends forever. Meanwhile, somewhere else, someone's asking about a missing freighter ship. We cut to Babapolia's office. She demands all records tracking where that ship went. Right then, the bald guy, poor thing, the beat-up who never gets anything, steps up, telling the director that they're searching everywhere for whatever she needs. He nervously asks if he could also take her out on a date sometime, but she just replies that she's been working hard and doesn't have time for that. Still trying his luck, the guy offers her a ring with an authentic sea stone worth 20,000 gold coins. He says he originally bought it for his 50th wedding anniversary, but now he wants to give it to her instead. One of the guards grabs him, saying he can't just give a gift like that to his boss. Babapolia tells him that if he manages to find out where that ship went, then he'll get his date. As for the ring, he should hand it back to his wife. Back at the base, they're inside warehouse B21, and the protagonist itching to check out everything they've received. Cheese reaches into his chest, pulls something out, throws it onto the ground. Suddenly, the whole floor glows purple, and a massive ship materializes right in front of them. Izo already knows. She says, I bet the city security guys are losing their minds trying to find this ship without having a clue where it went. But they have no idea subspace alchemy even exists. With that, the two of them jump inside. Cheese starts listing all the items there, and the total value comes out to around 200 million. The protagonist thanks him, since they're gonna need to burn a lot of money to build the next alchemy tools. Cheese also mentions there were 4 hellhounds there, kind of knocked out, and the protagonist orders a brainwash, installs some control devices on them, and sends them back. If those guys climb the ranks in the organization, they'll have some solid infiltrators. All that was left was to check the containers meant to be sent to the nobles, and Iso told him to open them. He grabbed the blowtorch, melted the door, and the moment it opened, Iso got this strange feeling that something weird was waiting inside. Suddenly, what looked like a red eye stared back at him from the darkness, and he immediately told Cheese to back off. Both of them ran out fast, but a creature with tentacles lunged at them, 1 attack for each. Damn, it was one ugly monster. And the worst part, Cheese told him to look at one of the tentacles. There was kind of an armor piece attached, carrying the symbol of Iso's family. The protagonist found that weird. That was his family's emblem, used only for high-risk biological weapons. It made no sense for it to be on that creature, but Cheese just said they'd figure it out later. For now, they needed to restrict its movements. He threw one of those spider poison bombs, but the monster started absorbing it through its nose. The big rat is confused. How the hell was that thing absorbing something that knocks out every other monster? Izo moves to the side and fires that weapon that turns anything into slime. The item starts to work, and Cheese says now it's gonna be easy. But weirdly, the creature eats its own tentacle to stop the rest of its body from turning into slime. The protagonist is shocked. This monster had self-consumption, which basically made it immune to a lot of their items. Right then, Cheese says they're gonna need Lucille's help to make this thing safe. But poor Lucille's sick. She's coughing into a handkerchief, looking miserable, really going through it. Out of nowhere, Alpenia shows up and tells her she can't just steal stuff from the master like that. Lucille, pissed, tells her to stop popping up out of nowhere every damn time. Then suddenly, the blonde girl offers her a tangerine, saying it tastes amazing. Confused, the demon girl looks at her and says to stop offering anything she's touched because it's disgusting. But Alpenia doesn't listen. She just tosses one right into her mouth. Lucille, angry, goes to punch her, but the girl's being all cute, saying they're friends now. That's when Lucille remembers what she said in front of Iso and wonders if that idiot actually believed it. Back with Iso, he realizes it actually makes sense that the creature is high risk. He asks Cheese where that elf Garcia is, and he says she's in the main hall. Immediately, the protagonist says he'll be right back and tells him to hold things down for now. Man, he finds the poor girl chained up in an electrostatic trap with dragon venom underneath. Yeah, there's no way she's escaping that. The protagonist, though, goes gentle, frees her, and she collapses on the floor, huge as ever. He rushes to help her, telling her to drink the antidote so she can move again. But damn, that woman's dangerous. The moment she takes a sniff, She grabs a blade and tries to end herself. The protagonist has to stop her, hurting his own hand in the process, telling her she didn't understand. She belongs to him, meaning breathing, ending her life, or doing anything else. It all needs his permission. Meanwhile, Cheese is blasting that monster with an extremely hot weapon, but the damn thing's adapting too. Looks like he'll need something way more dangerous to deal with it. That's when Iso shows up, saying it won't be necessary. The elf's beside him, and when he removes her blindfold, her eyes suddenly glow bright blue, and it seems to paralyze the creature. The monster freezes up completely and collapses. Cheese is like, what the hell was that? Did she kill it with a look? The protagonist says no, it's probably asleep. Just like he said before, she's a rare emerald elf, still waiting to die. But Iso tells her to stop throwing her life away over someone who's already gone. The guy might have loved her once, but that was just once. And an unresolved love like that, it's like milk left in the sun. The scene shifts to the creature now locked up in a cage. It's sitting there beside two idiots mocking it. The wild dragon says that ugly beast looks just like an eyeball. Meanwhile, the abyssal eye snaps back, saying no way, he's a noble, primordial creature from the abyss, and that synthetic monster can't compare. At the same time, Cheese explains that each of those containers has one of these monsters inside. They're all frozen in cryo-sleep, but when he used that hot weapon, it woke one up. So yeah, better keep the rest sealed. But Iso's curious, because the symbol on that creature was the same as his mother's. Like, what the hell? Was your mom like that too? That's crazy. Alchemy really is the way. The protagonist still finds it strange though, since the only person who ever received that symbol was Lucille herself. Cheese asks if he hasn't already read all the files. He should know about these creatures. Iso pauses to think and says it's hard to recall. Perserad's archives had over 220 million records. Then suddenly, it hits him. He remembers who else that symbol belonged to, the Supreme Sect. They were lunatics obsessed with so-called divine power, turning their own souls into grotesque bodies and monsters. According to his family's records, his mother wiped out the organization after killing almost everyone. But of course, there are always some survivors who escaped to another dimension. Cheese mentions there are still some crazy alchemists out there doing things they shouldn't, completely different from them. Iso replies that he probably shouldn't have killed the house dog so quickly. Then he turns and says they'll have to interrogate Garcia. Maybe she knows where those containers came from. Right away, it cuts to him asking exactly that. The elf's trembling like she's having a breakdown, begging to be killed. Meanwhile, she's pissed, wondering how that weird old man managed to get a beauty like her to like him. Iso immediately orders them to inject her with truth serum, using the microcapillary mist injector. That way, they don't have to use needles. The big rat teases, saying the kid likes taking care of ladies. The protagonist just explains that elves are allergic to synthetic materials like that kind of metal, which is why they can't use needles on them. But in the middle of that conversation, suddenly, the phone rings. The rat picks it up and says it's for Mr. Iso. The protagonist grabs it, already assuming it's another mess he'll have to fix because of Cheese. But Cheese says it's that lady. Turns out it's Renai. She secretly installed a phone inside the teddy bear and is asking if Iso misses her. Of course, he just says no and tells her to explain the emergency. She asks if she can't call unless it's an emergency. After all, she's his sponsor. Even if she didn't call, he should be updating her every day. At that moment, the rat lets out an evil laugh and presses some button. The protagonist says the bunny phone is for emergencies, not casual chats. Then suddenly, Garcia's chain tightens or shakes, something like that, and she lets out a loud moan. Renee, startled, immediately asks whose female voice that was and what's going on. The protagonist just drops the phone and starts choking that damn rat, telling him to stop ruining his life. He then picks the phone back up, saying it was just Cheese pulling a stupid prank. He's got tons of experiments to deal with, so he asks her to get to the point. She says her father and she will be at the theater at 8 p.m. on Sunday. He thanks her and says he'll confirm everything before the operation. A little later, Garcia is staring at them blankly, confused. The rat says she really doesn't know anything about the containers, and Iso agrees. They'll have to find another way to make her useful. According to the records, emerald elves were wiped out because they possessed an extremely rare hypnosis magic, one so powerful that mages hunted them just to steal their eyes for experiments. The Perserid family hunted many themselves, but Iso is the first to capture one alive. She says yeah, but she seems pretty motivated to end her own life. They'll have to do some kind of brainwashing or adjustment on this crazy girl. But Iso says no, he must have forgotten about Alpinia's eyes. They were also the emerald eyes of the queen. That item could communicate directly through the soul, and the Emerald Queen herself could command her entire race with a single glance. Cheese immediately says that would make for quite an experiment to see if Alpinia could control Garcia using the emotional system they installed. Right then, he seats Alpinia down and tells her to look into Garcia's eyes and say, "Obey Iso. If she does that, she'll earn a few chocolate bars." Alpinia happily grabs Garcia's face, but 2 hours later, her eyes are just bloodshot red. Cheese points out that clearly it doesn't seem to be activating. Iso's confused. She can use the angel's eye, so this should be working. Then he figures it out. Just like with the angel's arm, she needs to be in an unstable emotional state or trigger a painful memory. He leans in close to her ear and asks without hesitation, "Where's your mother?" Right away, her eye lights up, and Garcia reacts, grabbing her face. Then she says those are the queen's eyes. Why does she have them? But Iso doesn't care. Everything's going exactly as planned, and he just tells Alpinia to give the command. However, she's frozen in place, probably because Garcia is diving through all of Alpinia's memories, seeing everything she's ever experienced with Iso. The blonde and the green-haired girl are standing there paralyzed. Garcia smiles, starts walking, and heads toward the protagonist. He's all excited, saying, "Ha, it worked." Then Garcia kneels before her master, but strangely, she puts a hand on his head and says he can't call mom something like that. Immediately confused, he turns to Alpinia, demanding to know what she told this woman to do. But Garcia's hand lands on his shoulder, pulling him into a hug, saying she knows he's been feeling lonely, but from now on, Mommy will take care of him. The big rat's standing there completely lost, wondering what kind of twisted roleplay is going on. The protagonist pushes Garcia away, telling her to back off. His mother was the most brilliant alchemist in the Percered household, not some simple experiment like her. But from the angle we see with Garcia towering over him, it's clear he's seeing his mother's image instead. He's all disoriented, rubbing his eye, and tells the rat to be careful, not to take off his glasses or look directly into her eyes. He orders him to throw a grenade, calls out to Alpinia, but the rat says she's not waking up at all. The protagonist realizes that, just like when she used the angel's arm, she's probably weakened from the item's effect. So he shouts for the rat to restrain Garcia before she does anything. He pulls the pin on the grenade, but at that very moment, she yanks off his glasses and stares straight at him, and the poor guy collapses instantly. Garcia smiles and says that now that those two pests are gone, they can finally enjoy themselves. Iso quickly puts his glasses back on, points his weapon at her, and orders her to stay still, close her eyes, and not move. But she keeps walking closer. Then she grabs the barrel, presses it to her forehead, and tells him it's impossible. He wouldn't really shoot the mother he loves so much, would he? When he looks at her through the monocle, all he can see is his mother's face. She removes his glasses too, saying she knew her sweet boy would never hurt her. And just like that, Iso's falling into the trap. He keeps muttering that she isn't his mother. When it's too late, he's gone. She gently strokes his head, saying he's a good boy, and now he's smiling like a child while she whispers that she'll never leave his side again. Then the scene cuts to Lucille, who could go on help, wondering why Alpinia was chosen for the experiment and not her. She's unstable, sure, but that weirdo shouldn't have been picked instead. At least Lucille feels confident. There's only one person who competes with her on this base, that incompetent girl. But right then, she sees a memory flash by the protagonist with Garcia and immediately screams, What is that? Who's that other woman? But before she can say more, Iso slaps her hand away and tells her to respect his mother. Obviously, Lucille's completely confused. What's this about a mother? Garcia then takes Lucille's face in her hands and asks if she likes Iso too. Furious, Lucille says only she can call him that, but at the same time Garcia activates some kind of power, forcing Lucille to drop what she was holding. The Emerald takes effect, she closes her eyes and Iso lays her down on the couch. But then Garcia, overtaken by the poison, knocks over a glass and collapses to the floor, her arms starting to corrode. The protagonist quickly grabs a viral suppression injection. He says that, unfortunately, for faster absorption, it has to be applied to the glute, just like in a hospital. Yeah, you can already imagine the situation. He's completely red-faced, while Garcia murmurs that Mommy's afraid of needles and he should be gentle. What the hell is going on? People in the chat are saying this is straight out of a movie, what a mess. Min hesitates, the needle gets closer, and as soon as it goes in, she screams. I mean, the syringe was huge. Anyone would yell with something like that. The protagonist warns that, unfortunately, one dose might not be enough. She says she understands, but asks him to be a little gentler this time. Meanwhile, the portrait of his mother seems to be watching this disaster unfold as if her image is being desecrated. He apologizes under his breath, while Garcia sweetly says, It's okay, darling, I know you're just taking care of me. And, oh God, the whole thing's absurd. Then the item around his neck, known as the heart of a Percered, detects that his mind is being contaminated. It triggers a transfer from his right twin core, creating a mental protection field around him. From the bed, Garcia, still caught in that strange trance, murmurs that her little boy has to take care of her, that it hurts so much. Inside his own mind, he's trying to figure out how the hell he ended up in this situation. He remembers that Garcia's jade ability shouldn't be able to rewrite his memories. Maybe it had something to do with the queen's eye that was inside Alpinia. He realizes that maybe the words used or the way Alpinia interpreted the command were completely wrong, and he needs to fix it. He has to wake Alpinia up fast and remove Garcia's condition, because something's definitely off. Oh, now it makes sense. Alpinia used the queen's eye to activate Garcia's eye while imprinting the thought in her mind that she was Iso's mother, basically commanding her to take care of him. That's what happened. Now Iso tells her to stay still, saying this charade is over. But then Garcia turns toward him, wondering why the Percered's mental defense didn't trigger instantly. At that moment, she takes his hand. She's lying there on the bed, sad and massive, asking if he doesn't love Mommy anymore. Oh, for crying out loud. He's furious that she's acting like that, yet at the same time admits that her soft body carried the same scent as his mother's. Okay, that's weird. He've already purified the psychic pollution from the Queen Elf's eye, so this doesn't make sense. Trying to regain control, he says if she promises to obey him from now on, then he won't leave. Garcia replies that he can trust her. Mommy always obeyed him. He orders her to stop with the mommy nonsense because he's a grown man now. Also, she's not allowed to call him that sweetheart in any situation. She must always use his full name. Garcia says she understands, but while kneeling, she asks if when they're alone, she can use it just between them. He says fine, but if she ever breaks that rule once, they'll never negotiate again. She agrees, then gives a little smile and says, Mommy's boy has grown up into such a strong, independent man. Then she adds that no one else is around, so they should enjoy a hug and some sleep. And yeah, that's clearly his weakness. He's already giving in, thinking there's no fighting fate. Unfortunately, everyone's asleep now, and maybe that's the easiest way to keep her under control. His coat shoes are by the bedside while she murmurs that she'll never leave him again, tracing a heart shake with her hand. He has no idea what just happened, thank God. But now Garcia is officially on the list of people who share time in his bed. Lucille points at him, demanding to know what the hell just happened. This was a complete disaster. The protagonist says there's nothing he can do. She has a memory link reinforced by a psychic system based on maternal genes, connected through some kind of nerve loop. Whatever it was, it basically meant he couldn't resist it. Cheese cuts in, "So, it's already morning, we still have important stuff to handle." They needed to recover the 1,000 Birds unit, those Chidori girls who work down on Red Light Street, honest workers, as he calls them. The protagonist goes, "Wait, Cheese, you seriously want to save those idiots?" The rat says it's both weird and funny that they got countless creatures around, but not a single person to help clean the place. They needed assistance. And of course, Iso is easily convinced with the simplest argument possible, getting more women to the base. He figures maybe now that the place will be full of girls and they really do need some help tidying up. The scene then shifts to a dorm at night in the Demon Realm's barracks. One of those honest workers is doing her best while a guy lounges around, commenting that the price of spiral corpses has gone up 5 times this month. The long-nosed man says their boss apparently delivered the Emerald Phantom to the Red Light District, and a gang called 1,000 Birds would handle distribution. If they could take control of that product, they'd be set for life. Another guy raises his arm asking, "Wait, where's the boss? He's been gone for hours. Shouldn't he be back by now?" The man smacks the backside of the well-dressed worker and tells her to go check the bathroom. Suddenly, the lights go out. The woman stops mid-act and says something just fell on the table. The guy lights a match, only to see the boss's corpse with a mark on his forehead. It's the symbol of the city's number 7 hero of the Night Arbiter. Immediately, the guy grabs Yuzi, shouting that the freak is here. The fat one starts convulsing, bleeding from every pore. Another one hides, terrified, when a hand touches his shoulder, and when he turns, it's one of the girls, all twisted and transformed. The man panics and empties the whole magazine on her without hesitation. Moments later, the place echoes with gunfire and chaos. When things settle, there's only the street worker left, pleading for her life, saying she had nothing to do with the drugs. She's barely alive, shaking as a huge eye appears behind her and moves closer, saying she's a filthy leech profiting off misery and deserves to die. But this time, the final judgment would depend on her. The next chapter opens with rain pouring over the city. A girl steps out of a car, muttering that it's really coming down today. Her files are all gonna get soaked. Her name's Yan Yefeng, assistant to the director of the Black Veil District. The taxi driver looks nervous, asking what's going on, and when she turns to see it herself, she drops everything in shock. Inside the district HQ, all those drug cartel men are hanging dead. Reporters crowd around the scene, identifying the mark of the number 7 Meg hero. And now, the question spreading through the public is, when the sun sets and chaos takes over, who's really protecting the city? The council? The corrupt officers? The merchants? None of them. The people have already made their choice. It's him, the angel who hides in the dark, the one who delivers judgment upon evil. The hero known as the Night Arbiter, declaring that this city belongs to the Perserid family, and until his return, no insect has the right to defile it. Where did this lunatic come from? And what's his connection to the Perserids? The scene shifts again, showing the Chidori girls in the hospital, all covered in blood even now. Somebody please give those girls a bath already. Oh right, he hadn't restored them yet. He'd only use that thing that keeps the body intact. Now, all of them are inside capsules while the protagonist is looking through the files. Cheese tells him not to worry. They're both trying to save them, so all of the girls would stay alive. But for her to become part of their team, she'd have to willingly give up all of her independence. From that moment on, her identity, soul, and everything else would belong to the Perserid family. Seeing her 3 friends in such terrible shape, Phoenix says she accepts. The rat immediately tells her to take a bath and put on the uniform. Poor Phoenix is about to suffer and just says she understands. The clothes are folded neatly in the corner, and as she heads to the shower, she can't help but think about how she once swore she'd never depend on a man again. Yet here she was back in the same situation, and all felt like a bad joke. After her bath, she goes to grab the clothes and notices that the silk used for the stockings, or whatever it was made from an extremely rare fabric that cost 5,000 gold bars. Even back when she was earning a lot of money, she never had the guts to buy something that expensive. We've already seen a spoiler that by the end of the month, Izo's gonna scold Cheese for this. Each pair of stockings cost 5,000 and he bought 40 of them. The honest worker puts on the stockings, slips on the little shoes, and looks at the collar. She remembers Cheese saying it was a 5th generation alchemy restriction collar. The moment she put it around her neck, her mind and heart would be monitored and managed by the purser at heart. Instantly, it could trigger an effect, injecting dragon toxin or even sending an electric shock. And if her emotional fluctuation went beyond a certain limit, the system would activate soul destruction alchemy, turning her into a puppet without feelings. Damn, that's brutal. Still, determined to save her friends, she puts on the collar without hesitation. And with that, she's ready. Bioalchemy made division, Silver Phoenix, codename Alpha. She really has fine taste. The uniform looks incredible. He's there smiling, praising the design, saying it's perfect, custom-made just for her, and theoretically meant to fit her curves exactly. The protagonist immediately grabs him, telling him to knock it off. Alpha, since that's her new title, says she wants to help too, but Iso warns her that resurrection-based alchemy, under the Persered classification, is top secret. He can't let anyone see it. Alpha responds that since she's already wearing the collar, she technically belongs to the Persered family, so he doesn't need to worry. Iso praises the rat, saying at least the bastard's useful for something. The rat proudly answers, of course, I'm the most loyal one there is. Iso agrees, saying fine, then promotes her to second assistant. And well, it's just me, or does that uniform look tighter now? She says, understood my master, but Iso quickly corrects her. No one here calls him master. In this place, the correct title is my lord. She nods, agreeing. Poor thing's got to humble herself completely, but Iso thanks her anyway. In the lab, Iso hands the notebook to the rat, telling him to check every ingredient carefully and make sure everything's safe. They're working with biochemistry for revival. The rat asks if it's not just about injecting Azoth into the spine. After seeing the whole plan, he wonders why Iso doesn't want to use Azoth-03. Iso explains they can't afford to use something as rare as the essence of life on these girls. Refining even a tiny 40 milliliter amount of Azoth costs about 100 tons of gold. To create that final compound, they'd already used up nearly all the Azoth left by his mother and every bit of money he'd been saving. Not to mention, even though they'd earned a fortune from the Hunt Master, refining Azoth was incredibly complex and took a long time. He can't afford to spend the remaining Azoth on this base. If Alpinia or Lucille ever end up in danger, they'd have nothing left to use. She says he understands, but this plan Iso's working on is far from a simple surgery. It's more like a biochemical experiment that's never been tested on humans. It's madness. Still, Iso calmly says not to worry. He simulated this experiment hundreds of times in his mind, so it'll be safe. Plus, if it succeeds, they'll gain even greater control over future experiments. The rat's already convinced, saying that a whole squad of maid girls would actually be pretty amazing. The first to undergo the negative life transmutation is Experiment 001. Raven, now codenamed Crow. They'd use the theories of the dead paradox and the inverse life equation. On top of that, they'd applied nether essence, which passes through the soul materialization corridor inside the life reactor. Damn, that's heavy stuff. Meanwhile, poor Alpha's standing there terrified. The protagonist tells her not to worry. He knows these theories inside and out. Both the dead paradox and the life inversion are direct research from his mother. She studied everything from the Necromancer clan, so it's extremely advanced technology. Alpha asks if he's using Death Crytek, the terrifying Necromancer family. The protagonist says no, because that one always produced creatures addicted to devouring others. His mother, however, developed a second generation. The only downside was that people would lose all their memories. That's when he created his own version, adding the soul corridor to restore past memories. Now, by combining soul magic, the soul corridor, that family's structure, and the blood from the experiments, the success rate was incredibly high. The rat reports that the ether is fully charged and everything's stable. Iso immediately says to begin and presses the button. Alpha asks if she can help with anything, but he tells her no, maybe in the next experiment. Suddenly, green liquid flows into the tank and floods into Crow's body. Energy levels remain stable, and she's expected to revive in about 10 seconds. When the countdown hits 1, she slowly opens her eyes and wakes up. Alpha gets emotional, but Iso tells her to stay calm. Crow needs to remain inside the chamber for 14 days to stabilize her new structure. After that, she'll be reborn as an immortal being, forever young. He then tells Alpha to get ready because he's moving on to the next experiment. This time, it's the muscular one, Falcon. She's going through black alchemy in the ritual of impure blood. The rat notices he's using a werewolf transformation ritual to make her immortal, neutralizing the rage in her bloodline by fusing it with a bird-type lineage to reconstruct it. Finally, he'll add the bloodline of the Saho werewolves, beastly companions who once served the god Iso. The rat says he understands all that, but asks why he's adding monarch butterfly power. That basically limits her growth. Iso says the reason's obvious: he hates big dogs. On top of that, he added the butterfly trait so her fur wouldn't grow too long when she transformed, because hairy dogs are disgusting and would dirty the entire base. The rat complains it makes no sense. If he hates dogs that much, why not just do the same process as Crow? Iso answers that every president of the association must have at least one werewolf as a pet. It was his mother's tradition. He says that won't be repeated though, and walks off. She stands there wondering if the poor girl's gonna lose her mind once she transforms into a tiny dog. He tells Alpha to say something, but she just replies that if her friend comes back to life, anything, no matter how strange, would be a blessing. The protagonist says she's really smart and tells her she'll be helping him with the instruments once everything starts, while wondering why Alpina and that damn Lucille can't be this obedient. The rat, however, wants to know what exactly he's planning. Aizo explains that the third experiment requires Sierra's wedding dress. Sierra, the bandit of hearts. He has to steal it from the secret exhibition hall, along with the soul weakening field. But the rat's terrified. He backs up to the far end of the room, saying there's no way he's fetching that thing. Any woman resurrected by it couldn't even be called a woman anymore. Aizo tells him to bring it now, or else he'll put it in the rat's bedroom that night. The poor thing freaks out, saying that's just cruel. A while later, the machinery is ready to revive dear Falcon. Alpha's amazed. She's so young, yet she's already handling extremely complex alchemy equipment. Something about her feels oddly familiar. She remembers a brother named Gol who used to make shoes and clothes for her. And well, look at the outfit he made this time. Dan, the honest worker indeed. The reactions begin as Falcon suddenly feels something growing. A tail, apparently, and the protagonist announces the procedure's finished. Alpha, strangely, steps closer and plants a small kiss on his cheek, leaving him stunned. She apologizes, flustered, saying she got emotional since he brought her back to life and lost control for a second. The truth is, it was kind of an automatic reaction, something she used to do whenever her brother finished his work. The protagonist tells her to be extremely careful with that kind of thing. If Lucille ever saw something like this, there'd be blood everywhere. He also tells her to stop misunderstanding things. He's not saving anyone out of kindness, but because he wants to advance his alchemy. Alpha says she understands, but gently wipes the sweat from his forehead, saying he should rest before the third experiment. Aizo insists he's fine, he has stamina potions, though he wonders if he's been too harsh in her training. She's frighteningly obedient, or maybe she's planning something else. The third experiment begins with that cursed dress. The woman's name was Kin Neo, and damn, the thing really looked terrifying. She's activating some portable device trying to trap the dress inside a containment barrier. Aizo snaps at him to stop being an idiot. To capture that item, the suppression level has to be at maximum. He's already had his mind corrupted 3 times. He should have learned his lesson by now. The rat refuses, saying if he sets it to max, he won't be able to see the demon girl's legs. As terrifying as she is, her body's top tier. Aizo scolds him, saying he's really asking to die at the hands of that monster. But still, the soul suppression field is cranked to maximum. The matrix seal activates, and the suspension process begins for Chin Neo. Immediately, the protagonist commands to activate the dress. The top chamber opens, and the cursed gown descends toward her body. Her whole form starts glowing red while Alpha and Cheese look horrified. She's thrashing around violently. Alpha, confused, asks if Kin Neo is okay. The protagonist says yes. The screaming means the power is transferring perfectly. That's the whole point of the resurrection. The dress keeps contracting until suddenly the entire place fills with a strange red mist. Aizo can't see a thing, but notes that the monitor readings are all stable. He orders the rat to activate ventilation so they can see. The smoke slowly starts to clear, but even after an hour, they still can't see anything. He finally says, Cheese, go take a look at what's going on. But the rat bolts out in a panic, yelling for him to go instead. The protagonist says he can't. He's the lead in this experiment, so he can't personally interfere. That's when Alpha steps up, saying she can go. After all, that girl is her sister. He's helped her solve so many problems, and now she wants to return the favor. Aizo looks at her and asks if she's really underestimating him. Like he'd ever fail at an experiment like this. He praises her loyalty, but tells her she needs to have more faith in her master. He is, after all, the greatest alchemist of this century. Alpha's a bit flustered and just says okay, though she can't help but wonder why her master is so cool and so kind. Honestly, she might really be falling for him. The protagonist opens the capsule and starts heading inside. The radiation levels are high, but his protective cloak should keep him safe. He asks the rat how far and he's reading, but the rat says he has no idea. The protagonist tells him to check the thermal scan, and the rat replies that the entire room's reading as a single heat source. Aizo finds that strange, and suddenly a sharp static sound fills his headset, startling Cheese. The rat grabs the mic and shouts, asking if Aizo can still hear him. Alpha immediately says she's going in. It won't help him if she just waits here. But the rat tells her to stay put. She insists that this is crazy, but he warns her. If Aizo went in alone, that means he already has a plan. Interfering now would only make things worse. Besides, Aizo is a Perserid alchemist. In theory, nothing born in this century could kill him. Inside, the protagonist starts wondering why it's getting harder to breathe, even though the oxygen levels should be normal. The cloak should handle that easily. Then he notices that the fog itself is eating away at the cloak from the outside in. In seconds, it's disintegrating, and before he can react, he's shirtless on the ground with dozens of wires attached to his body. Out of the swirling red haze, something starts to take shape, and there she is, Kin Neo, wearing that cursed wedding dress, horns sprouting from her head, demonic wings, a dragon's tail. Honestly, she's got style. She even shoots him a glare that's half threat, half charm. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to Renai lying in bed, missing him terribly. She's dreaming, saying that if he proposed right now, she'd accept in a heartbeat. But in that same moment, Aizo is actually proposing to Chin Neo. The rat and Alpha are frozen in disbelief. Cheese even sneaks a quick photo. Then Neo starts forming a ring in her hand, saying that once it's on his finger, he'll become her husband. The rat's confused. How the hell does she already have a ring ready? She slips it onto his finger and says that from now on, he belongs to her forever, and he's forbidden to ever betray her. The rat just stares, thinking, of course, falling for the charm of Dysaria, a demoness of love and temptation, is impossible to resist. But deep down, he's fuming. Damn it, Izo. If I'd known this was how it'd turn out, I'd have gone in there first. Alpha, on the other hand, can't understand how this resurrection ritual suddenly turned into a wedding. The boy's not even legally old enough for this kind of thing. But then the ring on Azo's finger starts glowing, releasing waves of crimson energy around his body, and a full outfit materializes. Of course, it's a tuxedo. And damn, the design looks incredible. There's nothing left to do but accept this ridiculous situation. Neo smiles and says that now that he's wearing her ring, it's his turn to put one on her. The protagonist calmly tells Cheese to prepare that ring. Cheese, completely lost, asks which one he means. Izo says, the one stored in the private vault, code 15464. Cheese pauses, then says, ah, right, got it, while thinking this is about to turn into a full-blown soap opera. Then the scene cuts again to Lucille sitting in boredom. She's been stuck in this place for 2 days because of that stupid rat and is absolutely done with rotting there. The dumb blonde's gone missing, and now it's just her and that fat elf. And yeah, that elf really is chubby. She's there cooking while Lucille's fuming, watching her shake her hips around in that outfit. She shouldn't even be allowed near Izo. Garcia offers her some of the food she made, but Lucille says she's not interested until the smell hits her nose. It actually smells delicious. She snatches it away, thinking maybe that woman's trying to poison her. But whenever, there's no poison deadlier than Lucille herself. Right in the middle of that, Cheese walks by acting all suspicious. Lucille immediately notices and wonders why he's moving around like that. She follows him down the corridor, watching as he approaches a painting of the protagonist's mother. He presses an alchemy symbol carved into the mountain scenery, and suddenly, a secret door opens. The rat enters Iso's special equipment chamber. Lucille, watching everything, thinks to herself that Iso must be completely paranoid, building a hidden room inside an already secret base. The rat goes up to Unit 15464, scans the rope key, and suddenly the system starts speaking something about Black Fertilizer Protocol, confirming the identity of Cheese, the great assistant of Iso and self-proclaimed pervert. The rat curses, saying whoever programmed that system is a real idiot. All the security weapons point at him, ordering him to apologize. Then the testing sequence begins. The first test, answer a bunch of alchemy-related questions. The second, perform a specific dance. The third, juggle a few energy orbs. By the 10th test, he has to reveal the 10 most embarrassing moments of his life while hooked up to a lie detector. Then, out of nowhere, a little card pops out delivering the item with a hologram of Izo laughing, saying he was just joking and recording the whole thing. A little later, the item's in the protagonist's hands, and he praises the rat for his good work. He then places the ring onto Neo's arm, but the rat notices something off. Iso's smiling in a weird way. Maybe the demon's charm didn't actually work on him after all. And wow, Neo's design is insane. She's practically glowing, totally smitten with the ring. Meanwhile, outside, Lucille, who followed Cheese, wonders what's going on. That rat must be plotting against Izo. Why else would he enter his secret room? She bursts through the door shouting for Izo not to worry, but freezes when she sees him proposing to Neo. Immediately, she activates her powers, shouting that there's no way he's marrying another woman. She'll devour everyone here and dissolve that parasite. Iso orders her to stop and says the Perserid family doesn't waste time on something as ridiculous as marriage. But Lucille points out that he literally gave the demon a ring. Right then, a glowing magic circle forms beneath Neo. Iso explains that it's actually a miniature version of the suppression matrix, a containment item he created for smaller creatures, which happened to be perfect for this situation. With it, he managed to weaken the power of the woman in the wedding dress. The shocking part is that the experiment works so well she can now completely disassemble and reassemble her physical form, which even startled him. That meant his suppression field was now useless, and that's why he pretended to be captured in the first place. The rat praises him, saying it was a smart move, since catching a woman made of smoke would have been nearly impossible. Lucille says she gets it, but demands he remove that ring right now and prove it's not real. Iso says fine and tries to take it off, but it's stuck. He pulls harder, confused. Cheese immediately grabs a saw, saying it's fine, he'll cut the finger off as a thank you for everything they've been through. But Neo calmly says nothing will work. That ring is the physical manifestation of her love, so removing it is absolutely impossible. Even if the entire dimension collapsed, that ring would still exist for all eternity. And as long as it stays on his finger, she'll forever be his wife. She gives him a dark, menacing look, saying that since he's not being a good husband, she'll just have to use a slightly stronger method. Suddenly, the ring begins to glow, and Iso demands to know how she's using her powers if her alchemy is sealed. Inside, the energy spreads wildly while Lucille pounds on the door, shouting for that damn rat to get in there and fix it right now. She's about to rip that woman apart when, out of nowhere, both of them are stunned. A bed materializes in the middle of the room. Neo smirks, saying that his complicated, ironic alchemy really is impressive, but it won't save him now. She loosens one of the straps on her dress, saying that everything's changed, and suddenly his hand moves on its own, controlled by the ring. She greets him with a wicked smile, saying it's finally time to consummate everything. Lucille's yelling for the rat to open the door, insisting she's going in. But then Iso's whole expression changes. He suddenly says, enough of this farce. And what happens next? The entire wedding dress starts dissolving. He went all in. Iso explains that whatever power was left in Desaria's cursed gown wasn't that strong anyway. Her little tricks were flashy, sure, but nothing special. He presses a button, and the whole transformation cancels itself. Finally, some relief. The boy's safe, thankfully. The protagonist just stares at her, saying there's no way he, Iso Perserad, would ever lose to one of his own experiments. Lucille, though, covers her face, yelling at him not to look at that disgusting body. Then the scene shifts to the city. Our dear Babapolia is walking around, saying the food here is absolutely delicious. She thanks the officer for the recommendation, and he asks why she keeps calling him officer when she knows his name. She says it's because he's always hanging around, and besides, his name, Tang Kang, is kinda hard to pronounce, so she prefers something simpler. He just thinks to himself that her name's the weird one, but whatever. Then he asks why she made him her assistant when there were plenty of others at the base. She leans on him and says she did her research. He's the only one at the base who's never had a romantic partner, and teasing him is just too easy. Poor guy's about to go through a rough day. Back at the base, Lucille's trying on another outfit, and honestly, the design's way better than before. The protagonist checking receipts. They go out to dinner again. He pays the bill, and she asks for a ring. He drops a mountain of cash right there, telling her they've already been out all day, so she better be happy. He also tells her to drop the whole ring thing for now, because eventually he will find a way to remove it. Lucille says it would have been a perfect day if that stubborn blonde hadn't tagged along the entire time. The protagonist just says she needs to deal with it. Two high-risk experiments like them both need constant supervision. Then he says as a reward, he's taking them to a nice shopping mall. The girls are all excited, saying the place is huge. Once they're inside, he tells them to stay still and not wander off. He grabs a cart and says they can put whatever they want in it. But the one rule is that they're not allowed to get inside the cart. Of course, the moment he says that, both of them hop in. Iso sighs, saying those brats are just embarrassing him. And clearly, everyone nearby is staring too. Meanwhile, Tang Kang tells Babapolia that it makes no sense for them to even be there. It's not part of their job, but she completely ignores him, telling him to just enjoy his candy. He keeps complaining, saying this is irresponsible, that she doesn't care about the city's safety, but she tells him to relax. Standing behind a desk isn't going to stop any crimes. He fires back, saying that apparently her version of solving crimes is just going out and having fun. He's caught off guard when she suddenly asks if he really thinks that odd kid and that strange rat are just sitting at home with piles of money doing nothing. He asks if she's implying they'll spend it, and she says obviously they will. Like they take all that cash just to let it sit there. He argues that this is the biggest mall in the entire city. No way they'd show up here of all places. But she explains that she's already analyzed the regional maps and tracked all their movements recently, and she's sure they live in the market district. So if they're going shopping, that's exactly where they'll go. He admits that makes sense, but still doubts he'd just bump into them walking through a store. And right at that moment, guess who shows up in front of them? Babapolia pulls the candy out of her mouth with a smug grin. They walk past the two, and the guy immediately recognizes them too, whispering that they need to call for backup now. But she tells everyone to stay still and keep enjoying their candies. That's an order. She'll handle this herself. Meanwhile, Iso's over by the cheese section, obviously annoyed at the rat for making him buy all this stuff while the guy stayed home babysitting Lucille. He tosses some cheese into the cart, totally calm, until suddenly someone points something at his head, telling him to stay perfectly still. The protagonist replies that he's not some kid. He's Iso Perserad. The woman introduces herself as Babapolia, the new head of security for this region. She says he should actually thank her. If he hadn't taken down Rumir, she'd never have gotten this position. She quickly realizes he's trying to twist that into a threat, though, and says she knows very well the girl next to him was part of the incident 4 years ago that paralyzed the entire city. Iso says she's well informed, but warns that she should drop this before the entire mall turns into chaos. Babapolia says unfortunately, he's creating strong people, but they're all fools. She tosses a handful of arcade claw machine tickets in the air, and weirdly enough, both girls seem fascinated by them. Probably while he's being held up here, those two are off having fun, especially since each super coupon gives 50 attempts. Sure enough, they're at the arcade trying to grab some little bird plush in the machine. Lucille snaps, yelling at the blonde to move aside. It's her turn. The protagonist, still face-to-face with Babapolia, tells her she's delusional. Without those two, her fate will be even worse. But deep down, he's boiling with anger. How can they be so strong yet still so unbelievably careless? He tightens his glove, revealing a small device on his arm that releases paralyzing venom. He says she'll be down in a few seconds. But suddenly, she's right next to him, his weapon flying out of reach as she locks a pair of cuffs on him, and worse, she attaches herself to him too, saying now she can be sure he won't run away. To make it worse, Iso realizes the cuffs are enchanted, and there it is, a little heart reflection in her pupils. For God's sake, he thinks every woman in this world has some kind of charm power. Can I get one moment of peace? At that exact moment, the two idiots at the arcade manage to grab the little bird, but of course, the claw lets it drop. Lucille snaps and punches the machine, breaking it completely. Right then, Aso's necklace, designed to nullify mental effects, activates. Babapoli is startled, and an announcement blares that someone's vandalizing the machines. She suddenly releases Iso, saying she'll arrest him later. Right now, he should go deal with those two troublemakers. But before she can leave, she freezes. There's a scorpion crawling up her neck. She's confused, and Iso calmly tells her to wait as the creature crawls up onto his arm, warning that if she'd taken 1 second longer to remove the cuff, she would have received a deadly poison. He tells her to stop chasing him because she doesn't stand a chance. Babapolia tells him to quit stalling and rescue the girls who are wrecking everything. He just walks past and tells her not to turn around, or tomorrow they'll need a new director. She just stares at him, all smitten. The protagonist bolts off in a panic, wondering where that crazy woman ran off to. Now he has to scold the two idiots who broke the machine and stole a bunch of birds. He warns them none of them will sleep tonight, and they'll have plenty of time to think about what they did. Alpha begs him to be kinder. Keeping them up all night is cruel. The rat says next time call him. He's good at claw machines. Alpha says his pockets were shining, and oh, there was a grenade from Babapolia. He tosses it up in a panic, and it explodes right in the middle of everything. The girls ask if he's okay. He says yes, the smoke wasn't toxic, but he still looks shaken. Scene cuts to Tang Kang, asking why she let him get away. She grabs her loose robe and tells him to put it on the headboard, but when she goes over, she sees a photo. Who else but that kid from the rich family story? It looks like he was the first president of Gordon City. Babapolia is taking a bath, calm as ever, already getting ready to hunt down the protagonist. She's smiling, thinking Isopersurid has the power to change Gordon's order completely, maybe even a whole power structure. He apparently smells like her uncle. Her plan is to steal this little delinquent's attention and put him on the right path so the city can return to her uncle's era, because that's the only way to bring safety and happiness to everyone. Back at the base, after the grenade went off, some numbers appeared in the air. Iso instantly recognizes them as an encrypted ultra-frequency radio line. Alpha's just as confused as I am, not sure what that means. The rat explains those are signals only the government uses, basically untraceable. The strange thing is, since she passed that info, it means they can now eavesdrop on government communications. She immediately asks, Iso, what did you do with that new director for her to give you such an important number? Iso finds it odd. She slipped it into his pocket without a word. Even weirder if she worked to make it happen. The rat says he'll grab a radio so they can listen, but Poda is scared. What if it's a trap? What if she's using a reverse ultra-frequency locator to connect to the base and pinpoint their location? The rat tells him to relax. She doesn't have that tech. Still, Iso's nervous. He tells them to fetch his device, and the guy brings an ultra-advanced radio receiver Iso built, untraceable, with an 8,000-kilometer range or something. Suddenly, someone presses a kiwi in his mouth. It's Garcia. He tells that woman not to interfere, but she's also about a watermelon, saying she saw on a channel that those fruits are important for staying healthy. He just tells her to get away and shoves her aside. He decides to focus on work but sees everyone already devouring the fruit like it's an emergency. He puts the two in a squat punishment, but knows he needs a harsher discipline. Then he decides to focus and tunes the frequency Babapolia gave them. He tells Cheese to stay completely quiet. Now they're about to acquire insane information. They hear someone singing about a frog that jumps into a river and finds secrets. And of course it's Babapolia in the bath, relaxing with her little toy frog floating beside her, listening to everything. She asks what the little troublemakers from Gordon are up to this time. The rat grabs the communicator, saying they're going to tear into her, but Iso snatches it away, wanting to know what that corrupt cop actually wants. She tells him not to be so angry, she just wants to take him out on a date. The protagonist looks confused, and before he can say anything, Lucille rips the communicator from his hand and threatens to curse that witch with flesh-melting magic for trying to seduce her master. Babapolia ignores her completely, and Alpina drags Lucille away before she burns something. Iso warns Babapolia she'll regret playing these little games, but she says she already knows he's planning to strike the Kurumaya family, and she's actually interested in helping him. But then she suddenly asks, why did you put that frog there, by the way? The scene shifts to Tang Kang, who insists it's too dangerous for her to go alone. Those men are high-level criminals with over 100 offenses each, but she tells him that from now on his codename is Pest-01. He has to understand that under the right conditions, even pests can become useful creatures. For example, you can use swarms of locusts to clear out other insects that ruin pasturelands. Back at the base, the rat says it's crazy for him to go to that so-called date just to eat a hamburger. And not just any hamburger, the best one in the entire city. That means she already knows the area inside and out. He asks who he's taking tomorrow, Lucille or Alpina. The protagonist says neither. It'd only cause chaos, and it wouldn't reflect well on him. That's why tomorrow, the Silver Phoenix, their dear Alpha, will be going instead. Alpha hesitates, asking if he's sure she's the right choice, but she's clearly flustered, saying yes. It's an honor to be by her master's side. She's just worried she'll mess something up. He tells her not to worry. It won't happen. The scene cuts to the lower section of the base. He goes to an alchemy tank, and from it rises what looks like a block of ice, or maybe metal. Alpha asks what it is, and he explains it's cryosilver, not a chiropractor. Cryo as in cold. It's an ultra-resistant, low-temperature metal he forged through alchemy. Then he tells her to lift her skirt. She freezes confused, wondering if he's finally showing a cruel side after being so kind until now. She hesitates, but he says if she wants to be the chief maid, she has to learn obedience. So she reluctantly obeys and says she'll think of it like a curious boy trying to learn about the world. He jumps back, startled, yelling at her to put it down. He didn't mean that part. He wanted her to lift the back section where her feathers are stored. She complies, still puzzled. He then demonstrates that simply touching the new silver to her old feathers makes them shatter instantly. Alpha's shocked. The item she spent so long crafting was destroyed so easily. He explains that he analyzed its composition, 57% mithril mixed with carbon and other elements. It was a high-grade weapon, but still no match for his creations. She asks what would happen if that metal touched human skin. He explains that since humans are made mostly of carbon, one touch would feel like being hit with an instant freezing spell. She warns him to be careful, but he explains his gloves nullify any special material effects, even extreme cold. She asks if he created this to fight some incredibly strong enemy. He says yes, he designed it to battle lava dragons. But then we flash back to the past where Cheese is complaining that the ice in his drink melts too fast. That's when they made the metal ice cubes, tiny steel blocks that could keep your drink perfectly cold forever. The problem was that if even a bit of it touched your mouth, you'd be completely frozen solid. He explains to her that he's going to forge a new set of feathers using this material, but to handle it properly, she'll have to go through intense cold resistance training. As always, the girls start imagining weird stuff, and Alpha says it'd be embarrassing to stay like that all day. But she gets confused when she realizes he's talking about ice cream. He tells her not to underestimate how dangerous ice cream can be. For a normal human like her, this is the perfect beginner's training. It might look harmless, but if she eats enough of it, it'll start freezing her from the inside, just like the effect of the feathers. Those feathers penetrate the cells and freeze them from within. Alpha says she understands, but doesn't seem entirely convinced. The scene shifts to Chinonio, or I guess now her name's Katanori, which honestly sounds better, opening her eyes with beams of light rising all around her. By then, Alpha had already eaten all the ice cream and says her brain really feels like it's starting to freeze. Aizo tells her that 5 isn't even close to the limit, so she's got to keep going no matter how much it hurts. But suddenly, an alarm blares through the base. Katanori has escaped from her container. They rush to the elevator, sprinting through the hallways toward room 705. When they arrive, she's gone. Aizo finds it strange, the capsule's intact, and the rat points out that the glass around it hasn't been touched either. Alpha asks where she could have gone, and Aizo reminds them she's still wearing the alchemy collar he gave her. He checks her location and freezes. She's in F202. When they get there, she's casually playing with the wild dragon, who's bright red and wagging its tail like a happy puppy. Katanori waves with a smile, dressed in a maid outfit, and asks when he was planning to tell her he had such adorable pets. She shouts that she's extremely dangerous, but secretly he's proud because the maid outfit he designed looks perfect on her. The rat explains that the dragon is a descendant of the 6-winged fire dragon Razin. His name's Rizani, and he's been raising him since birth, which is why the creature's so friendly. Aizo, however, is running out of patience. He grabs her hand, activating the ring on her finger. A transmutation circle appears above them, and moments later, she's restrained right in front of him. He tells her that the dragon isn't her toy, and that whole husband thing was just a side effect from the dress of malice. They have absolutely no relationship whatsoever, and she better remember she's nothing more than a maid. Damn, Aizo really put her in her place. Alpha agrees, telling Katanori that since the master brought her back to life, she shouldn't act like that. But then suddenly, a tear falls from Aizo's eye. The rat asks what's going on, and he admits he doesn't know. He just feels weird. Alpha tells him to look at his glove, which is glowing. When he pulls it off, he sees the ring emitting a faint aura. He wonders if this is some hidden function he didn't know about. Katanori explains that it's an emotional link. When she feels sad, he feels it too. Aizo insists that those emotions are just remnants of the impulses from the demon queen Sierra. He's not her fiancé, and those feelings aren't real. Katanori says yes, the dress influenced her, but she also inherited many of Sierra's memories. Still, she isn't that woman. The reason she sees him as her husband is because he had the courage to enter Sierra's soul mirage to save her. That soul mirage was the purest form of a demon's essence, the physical manifestation of its primal instinct. The red mist she controls causes anyone who steps into that place to merge with her essence. Yeah, merge with her, and unless you're compatible, your body gets torn apart from the inside out, your heart ripped in half. That's how she chooses who gets to stay with her. So if he survived it, it means they're completely compatible. Aizo realizes this emotional link thing is going to be a real problem. Then, out of nowhere, Chi says he can make her obey, under 2 conditions. He wants 5,000 kilos of gold to spend however he wants, and Aizo isn't allowed to ask how he'll make it happen. Aizo just agrees. Chi leans in close to Katanori, whispers something in her ear, and she smiles. She then turns toward Aizo and says she'll accept being his maid, but only if she becomes the head maid. Damn, she just challenged Alpha to a 1v1. The protagonist stays silent, but Alpha immediately steps forward, facing Kotonori head-on. She tells her to remember who the true master is and that she should stop trying to cause trouble. Kotonori replies that she's not the same girl anymore. Besides, this isn't some casual competition. She's the strongest maid in this place. Alpha doesn't look too happy, tightens her fists, and relaxes. She says fine, if Kotonori wants that position, she can earn it. But as she becomes the head maid, she'll have to take care of everyone and serve the master properly. Kotonori looks confused, saying that's not the big sister's usual style. She's normally way more competitive. She can't believe a uniform managed to make her so obedient. But Phoenix thinks about how much the master has already done for them, and she doesn't want to stir up any hatred or fighting. She won't waste energy arguing over who gets to be captain. The protagonist then stands up and says yes, the head maid should be the most powerful one. They'll settle it soon in an official duel, and whoever wins takes the title. Cheese, of course, is thrilled. He says it would be way more fun if all the maids joined in so they could make a full ranking. Kotonori grins, saying she can't wait to crush her big sister. Later, Aizo asks why the rat had to turn it into a full ranking in the first place. The sneaky guy says, what's wrong with having all the maids fight each other in the uniforms I designed? It'll be perfect. Aizo asks if he's sure Kotonori won't cause problems even if she loses. Cheese says yes, then suddenly freezes, asking if Aizo really thinks Alpha can win against a girl who inherited the power of a demon lord. Even with those special feathers he gave her, there's no way. But Aizo insists he has no doubt her weapon's only running at 5% power, and she absolutely has a chance to beat Kotonori. 3 days later, though, we see the poor girl, once so muscular, being strangled. Wait, actually, it looks like she's remembering her time in the Hellhound unit. She wakes up suddenly. Oh god, she's already in a maid outfit. Crow wakes up beside her too, saying she must have been having a nightmare. Falcon gets up, saying she dreamed of that man who trained her like a dog. Then she stops, remembering she should have died by his hand, but lets out a small woof, maybe without realizing it. Right away, she asks why the two of them are wearing these stupid maid outfits. What the hell happened? Alpha calmly tells her to relax. What matters is that everyone's safe. She gets up, saying she's glad no one's being treated like a dog anymore, except she hasn't noticed she's got a tail now. And standing right next to her is the towering Kotonori, smirking and saying she's right. She won't be treated like a dog because now she is one. Confused, Falcon yells at her to shut up and asks what she's talking about. But Kotonori activates a mirror, holds it up to her face, and tells her to take a good look. Falcon looks confused and curious at first, then suddenly lets out a scream that makes everyone jump. After all the chaos they caused, the four of them were finally complete. First, their towering Alpha. Second, the fierce beat-up Kotonori. The symbols on their ranks were hard to follow, with that next one, that's Crow. And last, the one who used to be Falcon now goes by Hayabusa. The rat tells her to smile for the registry photo, but she snarls, threatening to kill him and tear him in half. Then her collar lights up, warning that she's showing aggression toward a master and a shock will be applied. Instantly, she bows her head, apologizing and saying she didn't mean anything by it. Iso walks in, telling the Dan rat to quit messing around with his disgusting hobbies. Cheese says fine, he'll focus on the competition. He pulls out a box with balls labeled A and B, about to explain the rules, but Kotonori interrupts, saying there's no need to make it complicated. She'll be the head maid, and the other three can come at her right now. Crow wants to know why Kotonori's personality changed so drastically, and Alpha explains it's because half her heart now belongs to a demon lord named Sierra. Iser says fine, one-on-one might have been boring anyway. They'll do it her way. The scene shifts to the combat arena. The three powerful women enter together, towering like warriors, while on the opposite side, Kotonori raises her hand, forms a throne out of thin air, and casually sits down, striking a perfect cinematic pose. She scares them down and tells them to come at her. Hayabusa cracks her knuckles, saying Kotonori's face looks way too punchable, and she's gonna fix that right now. The protagonist, seeing her in her new dog form, mutters that she actually looks surprisingly cute like that. Then suddenly, bam, Lucille tackles him to the ground, yelling that she's a dog too, for God's sake. Thankfully, the dumb blonde jumps in to help play too, trying to calm the situation. But Iso just grabs both of them, tosses them out, and slams the door shut, saying he's done dealing with those two. The rat tells him to take a look, though, and when he glances at the mirror, Hayabusa's already been pinned down. At the same time, some strange markings are forming on Falcon's forehead, looking like they're binding her mind. The two didn't even have a chance. Iso's in shock. Kotonori completely soloed both of them with no effort. He expected the fight to last at least 10 minutes, but in less than 2, they were finished. The two lie trembling while Kotonori calmly asks when they plan to admit defeat. The rat whispers to Iso that maybe they should step in. Things are getting way worse than expected. But suddenly, a sharp slash cuts through the air, shattering the restraints. Both girls are freed, and a streak of shining metal is already at Kotonori's face. Alpha had launched a massive attack, clean and precise. Kotonori glares, asking where those old phoenix feathers went. Alpha smirks and says she's not the only one who's gotten stronger. The scene flashes back to 3 days earlier when she told Iso she didn't care about being the head maid. She wasn't even interested in that title, but Iso asks if she thinks it's optional to accept his decisions, Was she underestimating his authority? Caught off guard, she says if he's chosen her, then she'll do her best, though she admits she only wanted to save her friends. He laughs, saying she doesn't get it. He hates being forced into choices because of what he's created. If he could build Kotonori and turn her into what she is now, then he can turn Alpha into something even stronger. She stares at the strange metal, gleaming like ice, but not actually ice and not silver either. She doesn't understand it. Alpha then conjures a few more feathers, throws them forward, and one strikes dead center on Kotonori's forehead. But right then, the projectiles hit the ground, and suddenly Kotonori's body dissolves. She reappears wearing her grand final form, her full gown, and announces that she's finally unleashed it. At the same time, Alpha apologizes, saying she also had to transform. She adds that as long as she exists in this place, she'll always stand second to Kotonori. In that instant, giant crystal shards bloom around her, spinning as she floats midair with pure style. The two teammates are just standing there now, completely dumbfounded, wondering how both of them got so absurdly strong. Meanwhile, Iso and the rat are off to the side, placing bets on who's going to win. Then we flash back 2 days earlier when Iso explained that the most important material in the world is called adamantine. It resonates with its user's power and, most importantly, naturally repels mana, making it perfect for countering mages. The only problem is, if you don't have royal blood, you can't use more than 5% of its true power. He's explaining all this, but honestly, even I can barely follow his alchemy talk. The silver ice alloy he created now uses adamantine to generate an extremely strong anti-magic reaction. The downside is that whoever uses it can't cast any spells, but since Alpha doesn't use magic anyway, it's ideal for her. With it, she can generate her own cold metal constructs, but if she pushes it too far, her body will start freezing from the inside out, turning her into a solid block of ice. Man, that was a lot to take in, but I think that's the gist of it. Iso tells her that the choice to use it or not is entirely hers. Of course, Alpha agrees without hesitation. If he planned this out, she trusts him completely. He then tells her she'll be injected with the frost-resistant blood of the Siren Queen. Back in the present, Iso's impressed with his own strategy. Kotonori, however, is in trouble trying to impress him. She overused her mind and heart control lines, burning through her energy. Now she's struggling to maintain her gown's form. The rat thinks she might pull off something amazing, but Iso insists there's no way Alpha can lose. Both of them are shouting for the other to give up, until suddenly their powers cancel each other out. They collapse to the ground unconscious. Iso and the rat just stand there, completely baffled. The scene then shifts to a sunny beach where that badass woman, the one who's been teased forever but never actually shows up, finally appears sunbathing. Her friend beside her mentions that because she didn't assist during the bridge incident, the city docked 1,000 hero ranking points from her score. The woman adjusts her sunglasses, saying that just because she's a hero doesn't mean she has to be on call for this damn city 24 hours a day. Her green-eyed friend reminds her that when she became a hero, she took an oath. But the woman just tells her to shut up and leave. She only became a hero to stop criminals from destroying the city her father built. Then another girl wearing a mask asks why she's not taking action, since she already knows the ones causing all this chaos are 2 members of the Perserat family. The sunbathing warrior says it's because the one leading them might actually be her older brother. Her friend looks at her like she's insane. Are you serious? You're the eldest daughter of Lord Gorgon. How could you possibly have an older brother? The woman explains that her mother once told her something strange when she was little. In the flashback, her mother says, if one day you meet a boy who claims to be the master of House Perserat, never make him your enemy. That warning was oddly specific, because as it turns out, that boy was her older half-brother. The girl was completely stunned. She never even knew her father had another child. Her mother told her that when the time came, she would understand, but to make sure she remembered those words. Back to the present, the woman admits she knows she doesn't have many siblings, but the existence of one more doesn't seem impossible after all. The masked woman says that even if he really is her brother, he's still a terrorist. They have to deal with him. Are you seriously going to let him do whatever he wants in the city? She asks. The woman replies, of course not. The moment he steps into this district again, he'll learn his lesson and find out who father loved more. That's the White Queen's media entertainment base right there. The scene cuts to Uncle Tom's burger joint where the guys inside are practically drooling red. Their wives are pissed. You already know who's about to show up. At first I thought it was going to be Babapolia, but nope, it's Alpha serving our boy his McDonald's. Oh my god, but she's such a klutz. She spills ketchup all over his food and now everyone's watching to see how they'll react. Iso just sighs and tells her to stop making a mess, saying he can feed himself. But she insists, no way. As your maid, I have to serve you properly. She says she failed to meet his expectations during the test. He tells her not to think like that, just summoning multiple wings was already impressive for a first attempt. She blushes and says that if he really thinks that way, she'll serve him a little more closely, while every guy around is dying of envy. Meanwhile, Iso's getting irritated. That damn woman's making him wait. Worse, she has no idea how dangerous it is bringing him to a place where he could take a bunch of hostages if he wanted to. Then the door swings open. Babapolia walks in, saying she happened to catch a criminal on her way there. The guys are all staring again, whispering about how it should be a crime just to look at her. She hears that and immediately grabs the 2 idiots by their collars, warning them to watch where they're looking unless they want to end up in jail. They'd apologize like crazy, though honestly, it's hard to tell if they're suffering or actually enjoying it, before collapsing on the spot. Watching it all, Iso realizes this woman's clearly nothing like the other leaders he's met before. The cameraman, of course, doesn't miss a single angle. She sits down across from him smiling and says she didn't expect a criminal to be this punctual. Iso cuts straight to the point, telling her to drop the small talk and explain why she wants to take down the Kurumi family. She answers casually that the city of Gordon would be far better off without that family. While she's saying this, Babapoli is stealing food right off Iso's plate. Alpha is about to say something, but the officer cuts her off, telling the former leader of Chidori to keep quiet, and wonders how someone like her ended up as a maid. Alpha's stunned, wondering how she even knows all that. Babapolia replies that as the city's director of security, it's only natural she knows everything that happens around here. She got lucky, because right when she was about to wipe Alpha's old group out, they ended up joining Iso instead. Alpha's fuming, ready to punch her, but Iso tells her to stay put. He looks straight at Babapolia and asks if she really thinks he needs her help for anything. She glances at the menu and says that if he didn't, he wouldn't have agreed to this meeting in the first place. Or do you really think killing a noble is that easy? Iso calmly replies, it doesn't sound like much of a challenge. She laughs, saying he must not know about the 4 unforgivable sins. He answers immediately that of course he does. The most infamous is the Black Emperor, also known as Hunter. They say he's killed millions. Nobody can hunt him down. He's threatened countless nations, destroyed cities, committed massacres, slavery, you name it. The second is his personal idol, Jack of Hearts, an extremely mysterious magical assassin. The guy's so famous he even has a drama series about him airing in the city. The third is the most terrifying creature of them all, the Mind Slayer. People only know he exists, but everyone who's ever seen him lost their mind. No one knows where he is. And the last one, the deadliest of them all, is the Venom Archbishop, a mass murderer so lethal that people nowadays avoid crowded places entirely, because whenever he appears, no one makes it out alive. Babapolia claps her hands, saying he knows this summary pretty well. If they're all that powerful, if they're the so-called unforgivable sinners, then which one of them has ever attacked a noble? Iso answers, none of them. Not even my idol, Jack of Hearts. Then he looks straight at her and says that's why Iso Persuret, am going to show everyone what it really means to like this video. It helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.